Not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Oh, and for some reason, my music is not working. Well, maybe we'll just do it a different way. Oh, yeah, my entire hard drive is just gone. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to jump right into it just like this because earlier today I had an issue where my main SSD had disconnected from my computer. And that's where every relevant file is that I need to run the show mostly. Good Lord. Hang on. Let's see if. Oh, no. Everything is not here. Oh, God. Hold on. I really do need to see if I can figure out what the. No, there is nothing that I can do. If I go to. Yeah, it should be right here. Oh, no. That is really, really bad. Really bad. Let me try one thing. I just switched to my studio display microphone to see if you guys can hear me through the microphone on my monitor. Can you hear me through the microphone on the monitor? Okay. Audio is gone. Okay. Yeah, you can read my lips, probably. Unplug it all and plug it all back in. That may be what I need to do. One moment. Oh, okay. So now you can hear me? No, people on Rumble can't hear me, but people on YouTube can hear me. What the fuck? What a shit show. Everything should be working properly. No. That is so weird. How could you not have my microphone on Rumble, but you can have it on YouTube? It's the exact same microphone. Speak out loud. Just come here.
When you said something, I heard a pop and then it stopped. And then people could hear you, but I heard a pop here on Rumble.
Yeah, that doesn't really help.
I'm just trying to tell you what's going on so you can try and figure it out.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. I hear you on YouTube, but it sounds weird.
Yeah, it's because it's through the microphone on my studio display. Okay. Well, 1 second. Speak to people on Rumble and tell them that I know there's no audio. 1 second. I know. Working. Okay. So you guys have 1 second. Everybody just chill out for a second. We're going to see if I can get this working. Okay. Going back to the correct microphone on Rumble, if you can please confirm for me whether or not you can hear me on Rumble. We're going back to the correct microphone. And if you can confirm for me now that you can hear me. Testing on the proper microphone. This should sound a lot better. Somebody says, there you go on Rumble. I hear nothing. Audio is okay on YouTube. I am aware. No sound still on. Wow. Okay. So I'm going to take myself out on Rumble. We're going to go over here. All right. So on YouTube, everything is working good. Awesome. Good to know. We just need to make sure that it's working on Rumble as well. Okay. Okay, try it now on Rumble. Can you guys hear me on Rumble now? Yeah, Foxhole audio. Everything works but Rumble. That's right. Yes, I'm aware. YouTube sound is working, Rumble not so much. But now we need to see. It's good now. Okay, you guys, I did it. Great. Okay. Awesome. Everything is working. We're working on Rumble. We're working on YouTube. We're working on Pilled. We're working on Getter. We're working on X. So there was a software update that was causing OBS to not work just about an hour before I had to go live. So I had to do the update, and then I did the reboot on the computer, and then I came in and I tested it, and it said everything was working as you would expect it to. But then, of course, we started the show, and then everything went to shit. So the good news is, though, now that means that I can bring you guys all of the stories that I've curated for you throughout the day. Before we get into that, I must give a shout out to the sponsor of our program. That's going to be our friends over here at Rumble Wallet. You guys, you hear a lot about crypto, but there is a very important part about crypto that a lot of people don't realize, and that's that crypto was created so that you could be in control of your own money. After that 2008 financial crisis, when they bailed out the banks and they left all of us to go bankrupt, Bitcoin was designed as an alternative to banks. So instead of a bank holding your money, delaying transfers, limiting access, it puts you in control of that cash. And if you've ever had to wait for a transfer to clear, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Fast forward to today. Everybody's heard about crypto, but if you're not there already, getting started might feel complicated. This is why I love the Rumble Wallet. It's so simple. It takes all the complexity out of it. You can choose what you want to work with: Bitcoin, dollar-backed stablecoin, or even gold, digital gold backed by real gold. It's not complicated to set up. It connects directly with MoonPay. You can use your credit card, debit card, or your bank account, and you're up and running in just a couple of minutes. Once you get set up, you can even support your favorite Rumble creators like me directly. So you can do this now. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description and download Rumble Wallet. And from there, you get set up, you tap buy, and you're in the game. You can even use wallet.rumble.com. And in just a few minutes, you go from hearing about crypto to actually owning some. Thank you very much, everyone, for hanging out today, because we have a lot to discuss. And thank you, Eleanor, for getting us started with a Rumble rant over there on Rumble. She says that darn OBS, just like Windows updates, mess up my audio. Too much happening to not get our Zak take today. Eleanor, you, my friend, are a true gem. Thank you very much for that. And also thank you to Hogleg71 for the can, for the cookie and the can. 5x5, Zak. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. All right, you guys. So, if you'll take a look at the thumbnail for the program, I made an AI image of Dr. Anthony Fauci sitting in his room alone, writing in his diary with a poster rather, of 12 monkeys in the background. And of course, there is also a St. Anthony Fauci poster right there. Now, why am I bringing this up? I use AI images all the time when I want to see something that doesn't exist out there in the wild. Well, I bring it up because apparently images like this are illegal in the state of Minnesota. So that means quite literally every single time I make an AI image, every single time I post it, every single time I share it to Twitter or to Truth Social, I am quite literally breaking the law. And it would appear that I may be able to be held liable in the state of Minnesota for something like $500,000. Well, I have one thing to say. From my cold, dead hands, the state of Minnesota has no claim on me. I don't live there. I'm never going to go to Minnesota unless, of course, things change dramatically. Jixer Trixer also over there on Rumble. Thank you so much for gifting those 5 subscriptions to Debbie Brooks, B28, Minnesota Mom, FU222, and RJ Himple. All right. You know who else doesn't care about it? Is President Donald J. Trump. Take a look at this. You might remember several months ago, he posted this image right here on May 1st, 2026 on his Truth Social account. And you can see in this snapshot, of course, now it's actually not pulling up the snapshots. What is that? Let's do a refresh. There we go. Okay, you can see it's President Trump, it's J.D. Vance, it's Doug Burgum, it's Marco Rubio, and it's some fairly in shape brunette woman. I can't identify her as a member of the cabinet, but they're all hanging out in the reflecting pool right there. Hey, 17 Grasshopper, thank you so much for the raid over on Rumble. You are truly a scholar and a gentleman, buddy. Keep up the great work. All right, so you can see here, this is from a court case. In this viral snapshot, which President Trump posted publicly, President Trump, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, and Doug Burgum are all portrayed shirtless in the Washington Mall's reflecting pool, along with an unknown, possibly fictitious woman. An intimate part, the breast of at least the president, vice president, secretary of the interior, and the woman are depicted, with the Secretary of State also at least arguably included as well. The president posted this image on his personal account, presumably to make light of the public controversy surrounding the repairs on the reflecting pool at the National Mall. So yes, this could potentially make you liable for $500,000. Now, in this instance, they're talking about liabilities for X in the form of $500,000, but that is per picture. So that is every time someone posted or shared President Trump's meme of he and the cabinet and this, unspecified woman hanging out in the reflecting pool. Now, why is that? It's because Minnesota laws ban satirical image generation. So if you are a resident of Minnesota and you are using, Grok, or you're using ChatGPT, or you're using Anthropic, or God forbid, you have your own model running on a local machine and you are using it to create memes or satirical images, then you could be held liable. That includes things, whether it's, nudity included or, just like partial clothing, but also totally innocuous things as well. So, let's say somebody has a picture of I love making pictures of myself in fake movies and stuff like that. You guys have seen it. Like when I play video games, I'll post a picture of myself in a fake zombie movie shooting, zombies and stuff like that. I love doing that stuff. This, to me, is obviously completely illegal, what they're doing. This is a question of free speech. You should not be able to govern the production of these images. I mean, how does this differ from somebody taking somebody's pictures and putting it together in Photoshop? I don't think that it does. And it's no more believable than somebody who has, done something through art. I mean, there's a lot of very realistic computer image programs that you can use, things like Blender and stuff. They use it in video games. So if you ask Grok to make an image of that story for the emperor having no clothes in Minnesota, you would run headlong into the unfortunately hard to understand Minnesota law. What does Minnesota's law ban? Producing an intimate part of an identifiable person. It sounds broad, most likely because it is intended to be broad. What is an identifiable person? Is that a person that is a celebrity or a politician? Is that a person who you could simply identify based upon their face if they have a name tag, like St. Anthony Fauci in the thumbnail for my image? If I had made Anthony Fauci doing reps or something at the gym with a tank top on, would that have included something that would be illegal? Well, in this instance, you have a suit that is being brought by X against Keith Ellison, challenging the bill, which is HF 1606, the Minnesota statute that imposes an overbroad content-based ban on free speech and the tools of visual expression in a clumsy attempt to prohibit nudification. XAI strictly prohibits their users from generating nude or sexualized images of people without their consent. You can't even produce sexualized images without your own consent. If you know, even with your consent, I mean, like if you upload an image of yourself and try to put it in a compromising situation, most likely Grok is not going to allow you to do it. So there's really nothing to worry about here. But of course, the state of Minnesota wants the ability to go after, say, a company owned by someone like Elon Musk so that they can go ahead and siphon some money out of them. The penalty for producing a non-pornographic, non-explicit image using an artificial intelligence model is $500,000 per violation. No safe harbor, strict liability. It's absolutely wild that Minnesota was able to get this pushed through, but you look and you see who is controlling their government. Absolutely insane. Here's another one that they include in the lawsuit. You've got Chris Christie and JB Pritzker as sumo wrestlers wrestling each other, both of them obviously shirtless, wearing the classic sumo wrestler gear. But this, under Minnesota statute HF 1606, would count as an illegal image. Here you go. You got another one, which was a favorite of mine. Xi Jinping, Tim Cook, Elon Musk, and of course, our dear President Donald Trump hanging out around a Chinese street food table eating shish kebabs and stuff like that. But because they're wearing wife beaters, then of course that counts from the perspective of this law. So I tend to believe that X is going to be, they will be victorious in this lawsuit because the law is just too overbroad. It covers too many things, and it really is a First Amendment issue. So I wanted to specifically give a big shout out to Elon Musk for putting his money where his mouth is. I know there's plenty of people who don't like everything Elon does or don't like some of the things that he says, but I think that Elon Musk has truly done a service for humanity, and especially when it comes to protecting our civil liberties here in the United States. All right. Now, you may also know that today was the funeral of Lindsey Graham. Ladybug Lindsey was laid in state today in Washington, D.C., and President Trump and a bunch of dignitaries came together to lay him to rest finally. Bay Theater Dave, thank you, sir, for rating the stream. I do appreciate you, buddy. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us. Also, thank you to Trump One, who says, Zach, I ordered 5 Trump mystery boxes, Trump gold coin, and 5 silver coins worth the 250th anniversary. Also, thank you for rating True Reporting. Much love. Absolutely. I am happy to do so. All right. So I got a couple of clips from President Trump's eulogizing of Lindsey Graham. First of all, in this one, he goes off script when reading what was prepared for him.
Heated things got in Washington. Virtually everyone, Republican or Democrat, liked Lindsey. Well, not everybody, but it sounds good. Not everybody. He was a tough cookie. Okay, I have to veer from this for a second. He was a tough cookie, darling, but he was beautiful.
Well, not everyone. I love how honest President Trump is. That's so good. And then in this second clip, President Trump remembers the time that he doxed Lindsey Graham's personal cell phone number to the millions of people that were watching the rally at the time that he was speaking.
As you remember, Lindsey and I did not exactly get off to the best of starts, running against each other. Back in 2016, Lindsey said something rather nasty on his flight to becoming the next president of the United States. So naturally, I did something that I shouldn't have done. I shared his personal cell phone number with the millions of people that happened to be watching that particular day as I made a speech, a very important speech. And I remember the number 202-228-0292 if anybody wants to give it a shot. His phone exploded. He said, I had that number for 20 years. His phone totally, I don't know what he did with it. Oh my God. It exploded. That was the beginning of a friendship in a way. But it was Lindsey who had the last laugh because while I blew up his phone, all for one day. We became great friends, and Lindsay did not stop calling me for the next 10 years. It was not easy. I always cherish the memories of our golf games, and only because of his really, and I will say, this memorial service, it's so hard to say, a memorial service for Lindsay, it's hard to say. But I'll admit that one time Lindsay Graham and Annika Sorensen actually beat me and Gary Player together. Can you believe that? Annika played very well that day, actually.
Oh, only President Trump could turn Lindsey Graham's funeral into a comedy routine. Oh, absolutely love it. All right. Also, good news from acting DNI Bill Pulte, soon to be former acting DNI Bill Pulte, because Jay Clayton will be confirmed today, I think. He said, good news, in addition to the historic declassifications, transparency by the president, we are this morning, this was early this morning at 7:44 a.m., executing a fifth and near final round of terminations, and approximately 30% staff reduction from weeks ago, not from when Tulsi Gabbard took over, 30% reduction from when Bill Pulte took over. The intelligence community must protect the American people, not the political whims of the bloated and corrupt elite class. I would like to see that happening throughout the entire intelligence community. So maybe the CIA is doing this and they're just not talking about it. I know that Ratcliffe has allegedly been cleaning house, but, you know, the CIA is notoriously tight-lipped, so we're not going to hear about that. But this is very, very good for America and continue then to bring us the D class. And I sure hope that Jay Clayton is going to deliver in the same way that Bill Pulte has. Now, thank you so much to Revolution. Thank you for the cookie. Just a thanks for continuing to do what you do all these years, OBS notwithstanding. You're a real OG, Zach. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. And it is my honor to be here with you guys every single day. What about the casket? So it was not an American flag. It was some other type of a flag. Hold on. I actually had a clip of President Trump like tapping the caskets. I was looking for that. I was looking for a Bush funeral type thing, but there wasn't anything that I noticed. Trump slapping Lindsey Graham's coffin. Okay, here it is. Yeah, I mean, this looks to me like, it's just like a typical religious draping. I can't tell if this was a Catholic ceremony or what. Kind of looks like it. Yeah. It's like, good boy. No, it doesn't look to be wrinkled. Well, I mean, maybe there's a couple of wrinkles, but it's not like you saw at the Bush funeral. I mean, this looks like it was folded. They opened it up and they put it over the coffin. So, yeah, this looks pretty standard to me. There wasn't like anything in there that I caught from the segments that I watched. Yeah, Catholic, Lutheran, maybe. Yeah, either way, I don't know. There are pics with the American flag. So maybe they had an American flag on it when they brought it in. And then during the funeral, they draped this Catholic flag over it, or, some type of funerary draping. President Trump also ate Tic Tacs during the funeral. I mean, that's so not a big deal. Here we go. I did not see this actually. So this appears to be when they brought it in initially. So it looks like they swapped the flag out. It does look a little bit wrinkled, but it's not disrespectfully so. Yeah, it's not disrespectfully so, but it just doesn't look like they pressed it. BRD1776 said they had the American flag in the rotunda. Great to catch a show live. Thank you for all you do. Glad to have you here, buddy. Always a pleasure to see you. Okay, so yes, as BRD was just saying, the American flag was when he was on display in the rotunda. They must have swapped it out when they did the actual service. All right. Also, someone who is likely to have a funeral very soon, certainly for her political career and maybe for her freedom, Governor Mickey Sherrill has just announced that she's planning to block the names of those more than 6,000 non-citizens that were illegally registered to vote. She does not want to hand them over to the Trump administration. And of course, we've already been learned from the software company that the only way those people could have been registered to vote is if somebody within the New Jersey state government intentionally did so. So getting those names is a matter of legality. The Trump administration is going to want to speak to those people, I would imagine, and certainly the ones who actually cast a ballot. Well, that is a federal crime. Now, why does she not want to turn these names over? Probably because she does not want anybody talking to these people. I mean, 6,000, that is, again, only from that 12-month period that they admitted from 2023 to 2024. So she took to X last Tuesday to say that she had this software error, and this was part of the motor voter vehicle system where these thousands of foreign nationals were registered to vote when they signed up for a driver's license. And, wouldn't you know it, this happened right before the 2024 election when they needed to stack up as many voters and ballots as possible. So, of course, they could attempt to steal the election. Now, she said that the impact was minor, but as I think every single one of us realizes, there is no such thing as minor voter fraud or minor election fraud. Any single instance of a voter fraud disenfranchises a American citizen. So if an illegal alien votes, that is essentially a nullification of your vote. So that is no small matter. We cannot be having these sorts of things taking place within our system if people are going to, with a straight face, trust that the United States is a serious country. Now, when she spoke about this, she again only made reference to this very short time period, but this system was not implemented in 2023. This has been used by the state of New Jersey for some time now. But the 400 people who cast a ballot, they have committed a violation of federal law. The DOJ and the DHS needs to know who they are. So earlier, she announced during a press conference in Trenton that she will not be releasing the names of these voters to the Trump administration. She made a real production out of it. She said that the team for Trump is weaponizing the government against individuals that disagree with them. No, ma'am. No. We are using the laws as written by Congress to enforce laws that have been broken. This is not about going after people that we disagree with. You yourself said that the people who voted illegally were Democrats, Republicans, and independents. So we're not asking for only illegal Democrats who voted. We are asking for the names of all people who were registered, and undoubtedly you're going to have a spectrum of people who were registered, unless, of course, these people don't actually exist, or these people don't know that they were even registered. What if people voted in their names, as we showed when this announcement was first made? There was that post from Reddit where that person who was not a citizen said that they were unintentionally registered. They even marked that they were a non-citizen, and then yet at some point during the time they were living here in the United States, someone voted in their stead. That's a problem, and it's real, and it happens. And again, it's a disenfranchisement of American citizens. Mickey Sherrill needs to get her shit together. Otherwise, perhaps the DOJ is going to pay her a visit. I don't even think that we should say maybe. I think that that is definitely what should happen. Let's go ahead and hear from Mickey Sherrill. I'd like to see exactly how she justifies this.
The Trump administration is seeking, I believe by today, the list of non-citizens who are registered to vote and the approximately 400 that did vote. To what extent will your administration comply with the Trump administration's request in that regard?
As I have said, I am not in the habit of turning over private identifying information of the citizens of New Jersey.
They are not citizens of New Jersey. They are aliens residing in New Jersey. These people are not Americans. They have no protections in the way that Americans do. And again, what she's doing is essentially taking a big old New Jersey-sized dump all over the actual Americans, the actual citizens of New Jersey that are living in her state. This woman is a monster.
This federal government is weaponizing the government against individuals that disagree with them. They weaponized my private data against me in my election. And so I am working to protect.
Didn't she commit like stolen valor or something like that? Crouching Tiger, Hidden Rook. You may know about this, and so I'm asking you in the YouTube chat, didn't she commit some type of stolen valor? What was the scandal about Mickey Sherrill?
Protect people and their private data here in New Jersey. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the voter rolls are actually public data, and I don't know what she's getting at, like, you know, acting like this is secret, but she should hand it over. I mean, there's probably going to be some type of a subpoena. Watch this be another long, drawn-out court case. Any other New Jersey residents out there who can tell me what Mickey Sherrill did? Yeah, she definitely did something that was scandalous. I remember that. Never even had a real job. Her parents kept her in her basement. Maybe she did. Okay, so the 6,600 records submitted to the Motor Vehicle Commission and Division of Elections contained correct information according to the design specifications as set up by the state. So IDEMIA is saying we designed what the state demanded. That was the contract. All 6,600 individuals indicated yes to wanting to register to vote and no to being a U.S. citizen. The information was recorded correctly and always available. So at no point was a non-citizen ever marked as a citizen in the database. That leads to one thing and one thing only. Someone within the New Jersey state government intentionally registered these people to vote. And I think that ultimately Mickey Sherrill's bluster about not wanting to hand this information over is probably to protect whomever was involved in that. Naval Academy graduation after admitting she failed to report classmates involved in a massive cheating scandal. Okay, all right. I knew it was something military. All right. So, Governor Sherrill, we'll check back with you on that. All right. Yesterday, we learned that President Trump and the administration had filed an emergency request to immediately reinstate key parts of his executive order that was essentially nullified in one district court that is controlled by Biden appointees. Now, wouldn't you know it, Ketanji Brown Jackson just happened to be the Supreme Court justice that got her hands on that. And, of course, she denied the president's request. She gave the Democrat-run plaintiff states 7 days to respond to President Trump's emergency application. So we are kind of in a holding pattern as it refers to this. A lot of people have, you know, I saw a statement in the chat last night. Someone was disenfranchised with the Trump administration, not so much the administration, it was Trump. That was where the ire was directed. That Trump said he was going to do this, Trump said he was going to do that, we haven't gotten this, we haven't gotten that. There has, however, been things that President Trump has attempted to address, whether it's his demand for legislation or an executive order, which, of course, then needs to be solidified through a legislative action. And every time I see these things, I think that people must have a fundamental misunderstanding about the structure and the form and the function of the United States government. President Trump can't just say, this is how things are going to be now. If you want to get things changed in a meaningful way, then it has to be done through an act of Congress, because they are the ones who are in charge of creating laws. They create the legislation that goes on the books, and then that's the way that things go. Of course, the justices of the various districts around the country, they have legal decisions they make based upon the legislation that is written, and then they interpret that legislation to say, like, well, you know, it probably means this. And so their decisions have, in many cases, the effect of laws. But the president, the closest thing he has to that is executive orders. Now, executive orders can be implemented, but oftentimes, as we've seen in Trump's administration, they get challenged in court. And then so it doesn't matter what he's attempted to do. It doesn't matter what he has said that he would like to do. There is a roadblock between the executive and the legislative and the judicial. And that's not President Trump's fault. It's also not President Trump's fault that the Senate refuses to get off their ass and get anything meaningful done. So I think that the things that people are saying President Trump has not done, well, you know, I mean, it's not something that he can just snap his fingers and make happen. The Constitution is fairly clear, although, you know, right now we have a major problem in the United States with various branches of the government attempting to seep their power over into the other branches, extending beyond what the framers intended. Again, that is not President Trump's fault. You want to hold the justices of these district courts accountable? The only people who can do that are Congress. So once again, you look at Congress and you say, this is who I'm dissatisfied with. President Trump just happens to be the guy at the top of the mountain who is directing a herd of cats that we're trying to get into the back of a bus. And that is just unfortunately very difficult. So, Ketanji Brown Jackson says no, and we are now waiting for the 7 days that will elapse before the states go ahead and make their decision. All right, so this was a Boston-based district judge, Indira Talwani, an Obama appointee who blocked the initial executive order back in March of 2025. And then last month, you had another judge block key portions of President Trump's executive order. So now that this emergency request was made to the Supreme Court, we're kind of, again, in another holding pattern. However, we have a differing view, a differing opinion in a different district court, this time in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. They've actually upheld a lower court's ruling, which allows President Trump's plan to use these citizenship databases and restrict mail-in balloting privileges to those states who refuse to submit voter lists that go into effect. So it's a shit show, okay? Like, nobody is on the same page. We have different judges in different parts of the country who have now these split verdicts, and then it has to go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has to say, you know, okay, this is how it's going to be applied across the entirety of the United States. This is a big win, don't get me wrong, but it's not the end of the road. It never is until it gets to the Supreme Court, and it could all come crashing down when we get to the Supreme Court. So this executive order, in terms of the D.C. Circuit, says that it remains in place. Now, this is from the First Circuit, and the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia is a different circuit. The First Circuit is the case that I was talking about initially, and now the D.C. Court of Appeals is a completely different venue. But the appeals court is, of course, higher than any district courts. Again, Democrats are most likely going to end up taking this to the Supreme Court. The only question is, will they be able to stop President Trump and the administration from implementing these things before we get to the midterms? Who knows at this point? Now, also, I mentioned Congress. If these congressional leaders are unwilling or unable to impeach these corrupt district judges, then the only answer we have is to bring more legislation. I personally am not really a big fan of more laws, more red tape. I think we've got a lot of stuff on the books. We have many different types of methods that we can use within the toolkit that we have already, but nobody seems to want to do anything with it. So Senator Eric Schmidt, has just proposed the Boasberg Act. This is legislation obviously named after Judge Jeb Boasberg. He has repeatedly done everything he can to stymie the Trump administration, going so far as to pick up a case while he was on vacation, and he wasn't even in charge of the court during that weekend. Jeb Boasberg is the deep state, okay? He is one of the highest appointed officials within the American judiciary. Now, the bill would prohibit chief justices like Boasberg from influencing which cases they oversee. It also requires public disclosure of the assignment practices, and it would create penalties for anyone who meddles with the process. Courts would have 120 days to comply should they actually get this passed, but it's being proposed in the Senate. If they can pass it in the Senate, then they can get a version written in the House, and then they can reconcile them, and we may be able to get some movement. Now, Schmidt has said that Judge James Boasberg is the poster child for a rogue judge who exposed serious loopholes in our judicial system. Boasberg, of course, is an Obama appointee. He has blocked President Trump's deportation efforts. He halted visa restrictions, and he landed the Signalgate case, drawing impeachment calls from both President Trump and many of us out here in the general public. He has also had a misconduct complaint from the Justice Department, but I have heard nothing about that or seen it go anywhere. Duffy's Tavern says, worth $1, not Catholic, Southern Baptist. Thank you for that. Appreciate you. Trisha says, hey, Zach, did you see my Mitch McConnell email, specifically the headline for the article? I did see it, and I had a nice chuckle. Yes, thank you very much. And we actually do have a little bit of news on Mitch McConnell, but I think we should talk about John Thune while we're talking about the lack of action in the Senate. So there's been a bit of a back and forth between the White House and John Thune. John Thune is now lashing out at President Trump because President Trump has made a series of statements about him and his lack of leadership. Now, President Trump, of course, yesterday said that the Democrats can't believe how lucky they got with Thune as the Senate Majority Leader, as we are embroiled in this ongoing feud. Trump went on to tell reporters on Air Force One that Thune needs to get his job done, and he has a good relationship with Thune, but he declined to say whether or not Thune should be ousted. Personally, I think that he should be ousted. As we have shown here in the past, J.D. Vance could walk into the Senate, take control of Senate leadership from John Thune, and he could force the issue on a number of things. First, let's hear from President Trump on Air Force One. Okay.
President, you put out a Truth Social this morning about Leader John Thune. What's your relationship like with the Senate Majority Leader?
It's fun. He's got to get his job done. It's fun. I have a good relationship with John Thune. He's just got to get his job done. You got to get the Save America Act passed. Or better than that would be the filibuster. If you terminate the filibuster, everything happens. If you don't terminate the filibuster, only bad things will happen. If you don't terminate the filibuster, only bad things will happen.
But you don't want to see him replaced as leader?
I haven't even thought of it.
Man, I think that he should think about it. But here's the thing, and I see this in the chat a lot. People want to see something big. They want President Trump to activate the military. They want President Trump to call a national emergency. They want President Trump to roll tanks in the street and round these people up. I get it. I would cheer. Okay. There are some people out there who definitely wouldn't cheer because obviously many people believe that as soon as the government uses authority or seizes authority is probably a better way to put it, they are loath to put that authority back down. Now, John Thune, of course, said, if somebody can show me how we can get an outcome, how we get a result, we can get an answer to this, I'm all for it. But if we are going to be sitting here in endless quorum calls, I don't know if that's in anybody's best interest. This, to me, shows a tremendous disdain for the people that he represents and for America in general, also for President Trump. His only job as leader of the Senate is to whip those votes up, to get people on board with passing legislation. The truth of the matter is John Thune doesn't want the Save America Act to be passed. And I will say this, in regards to President Trump being forced to do something drastic, if they don't pass the Save America Act, if they don't secure the elections, if they don't get rid of the filibuster, and then the Democrats and the commies, because there's a lot of commies that are running in the midterms, if they end up seizing control of the House and the Senate, that may push President Trump to be forced to do something like what people are suggesting needs to happen, has needed to happen for some time. Now, of course, he also lashed out yesterday at Caroline Leavitt. He said, instead of, pointing the finger at Republicans, they might think about going after the people who are stopping it on the floor, which is the Democrats. And if there are Republicans they think are gettable, get on the phone. No, there are actually Republicans who are standing in the way of this as well. This is not just an issue of the Democrats not liking election integrity, but because so many people are bringing attention to this issue, because so many people are calling the office of John Thune, because so many people are tagging him on X. John Thune did an interview last night with Sean Hannity, basically doing a little bit of damage control, kind of trying to smooth it over, telling the American people that, it's not me, it's not Republicans, and we love President Trump, and we love the idea of election security. But remember the one sheet we talked about yesterday, the talking points that Senate leaders had put together so that you could speak out of both sides of your mouth, telling the constituents how you want to secure the elections, but then out of the other side of your mouth, talking about how you can't wait to go on vacation and you can't wait to basically do nothing and keep President Trump a lame duck?
He's got a lot on his wish list. He does. I mean, the main thing he wants, Sean, as you know, is the Save America Act, and that is something where like I said, we've had multiple votes on it now. Not a single Democrat has voted for it. I think we continue to put him on the record. But we've had 5 different votes on it already. If we can get a chance to vote on it again, the best way to do that would be in a budget reconciliation bill. And that would enable us not only to get a vote on that in some form, it's not going to be everything the president wants, but also do something with the military where we desperately need to ensure that our military has everything they need to deter and defend our country, and particularly with what's going on in the Middle East right now.
So why just talk about it? Why not do it? There's been plenty of time. I mean, I go to work every single day. All right. And as far as I know, these guys actually show up in Washington, D.C., unless they're on their 5th vacation, which hasn't come up yet, but it's coming up very shortly. Why not do it? Why not get the vote scheduled? Why not force it? You're the leader of the Senate. You set the agenda. Again, it's because he is giving lip service. He doesn't really want this. What are they actually talking about in the Senate? I don't have C-SPAN, so I'm not watching these guys on a daily basis. I don't know what they're actually talking about. I don't think they're passing anything. I haven't heard about anything making its way through. A lot of glad handing and, hand jobs, if you know what I mean, behind the scene with lobbyists.
And there's some stuff in there for agriculture. It's a bill the House passed, and it's no easy feat. The Senate, we don't have 50 votes for it today, but hopefully we can get there.
Getting rid of the filibuster, non-starting.
So they don't have 50 votes. That means, again, that there are Republicans who are refusing to vote for it. Republicans like, certainly, John Cornyn. John Cornyn doesn't have to wear the mask anymore because he got primaried. Who else? I mean, there's plenty of them out there who probably they could give 2 shits. Like, they're there to pick up a paycheck, and they're there to make President Trump's life hell. But even worse, they're there to make the people that they were allegedly elected to represent hell as well.
You don't have the votes?
Well, we don't. And I've actually I've had this conversation with the president many times, I think, as you know. And I actually suggested at one point that his team come up and sit down and visit with some of my colleagues. So they came up, met with about 20 Republican senators, and 15 were no on getting rid of the filibuster. The votes aren't there to do it. I know he thinks he can persuade people, but there are a lot of folks who are this is a hard position for a lot of Senate Republicans.
Okay, so as soon as the commies seize control, not only are they going to get rid of the filibuster, but then they'll probably vote to get rid of the Senate entirely, which is one of their stated goals. Now, also, while John Thune was on this interview last night, he sort of was giving a bunch of reasons how this is not going to be able to be done and how it's never been done before. But, of course, Based Mike Lee knows his stuff. He brings the sauce. Let's hear from Thune first, and then we'll read through the rebuttal by Based Mike Lee.
One thing about the talking filibuster, and it hasn't been used in something like 100 years. People point to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, but that it actually was done under regular order. They invoked cloture, passed it that way. But you turn control of the floor over to the Democrats. It's not only unlimited debate, it's unlimited amendments. And the Democrats will have a long list of amendments. And so every time they get an amendment, get it considered, gets disposed of, the clock resets. Every Democrat can give 2 hours of speeches. So that's 47 or times 2, 94 hours of speeches. And then every time you have a vote on an amendment, you go back, start all over again. So the Democrats, this is something that they're...
So basically, he's saying that it's too much work. I don't care enough about securing American elections, and I don't care enough about what the people of this nation want. What I really care about is getting my beauty sleep. What I care about is being able to go back to my office or my cushy condo in Washington, D.C., because I don't think he's going home to a wife, let's be honest. And so that he can go maybe to cocaine-fueled orgies with the other closeted gays in the Congress.
Salivating over the opportunity to have is a talking filibuster. So that isn't the best path in my view. And frankly, I don't think we probably have the votes in the Senate among Republicans even to get on a talking filibuster.
Yeah, so he doesn't know, which means that he hasn't tried. He has absolutely no idea because he's not doing his job. He's worthless. He's a ballless cuck.
But I do think we have a possibility through budget reconciliation to get some of this done.
If you could go either
one thing.
So you have the possibility through budget reconciliation. Do it. Get it done. So let's hear from Based Mike Lee, because, you know, Based Mike Lee is an intelligent guy, and he's been pushing for this stuff in a number of different avenues. My colleague, and he's so polite. Okay, he really is a gentleman. Far kinder than I would be. My colleague from South Dakota suggests here that the talking filibuster hasn't been used in a century and that it was not used to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964. He's mistaken. As I've explained to the entire Senate GOP on multiple occasions, the talking filibuster was used effectively to break the weeks-long filibuster mounted against the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Leader Thune and others point out that the Senate ultimately invoked cloture on the Civil Rights Act, and on that basis, wrongly conclude that the talking filibuster was not the tool used to achieve that victory. This argument ignores the fact that this is how the Senate closed a staggering 30-vote cloture deficit in 1964. After many weeks of fighting a losing battle, filibustering senators predictably started to lose their resolve to hold up the bill indefinitely, especially when they realized about how hard they'd have to work to keep that effort alive. So they started proposing and supporting amendments to the bill to make it more palatable and help them save face. I still maintain that this is a viable approach that could work well, even better in the context of the Save America Act, especially considering that the bill is less complicated and less controversial with voters than was the Civil Rights Act, and currently has a cloture deficit of only 10 votes. Tiny comparable to the 30-vote deficit faced by the Civil Rights Act of 1964. My colleagues also mistakenly suggest that Senate Republicans would have to vote to enforce the talking filibuster. That simply isn't true. No vote is required for this step. All we need is a majority leader willing to announce that we're getting on the bill and that we will continue to debate it until it passes. All with the understanding that if filibustering senators fail to show up to debate it, we can call the question and pass it with a simple majority. You hear that? If they're not present, they don't need to get to 60. They can do a simple majority, 50 plus 1. That understanding, in turn, is what motivates the filibustering senators to show up and speak. But it's also what naturally causes them to tire of the exercise after a few weeks, at which point they start looking for a face-saving off-ramp. Finally, Leader Thune suggests that the talking filibuster would be thwarted by being reset each time Democrats offered an amendment. There's a valid point in there, but it's not a good reason to not invoke the talking filibuster. It appears he is referring indirectly to paragraph 1A of Senate Rule 19, the two-speech rule. While offering a new amendment can create a new question under longstanding practice, the September 25th, 1986 precedent narrowed how rigidly the two-speech rule is applied by clarifying that many procedural actions do not count as speeches at all. Particularly in light of that 1986 clarification, it's been a long time since I've suggested we consider rigid enforcement of Rule 19's two-speech limit as part of a talking filibuster strategy to for the Save America Act. We don't need it. nor was that rule aggressively enforced during the Senate's consideration of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Majority Leader Mike Mansfield correctly focused on requiring actual debate from filibustering senators rather than looking for technical ways to shut the debate down. To give credit where it's due, I appreciate what Leader Thune said in this interview about the possibility of passing some iteration of Save America using budget reconciliation, a procedure in which there is no 60-vote cloture hurdle. I've been skeptical of this approach in the past, but I'm starting to believe the Save America Act has more budgetary features than I initially considered possible. That said, reconciliation is fraught with all kinds of problems, challenges, risks, and uncertainties. Also, failure can be far too easy to blame on the parliamentarian, because we all know that John Thune literally kneels at the feet of that woman. I'm open to considering the reconciliation path, but we should make this decision with our eyes open. To do that, we need to separate fact from fiction when it comes to the talking filibuster. Again, John Thune is merely looking for excuses to not bring this to the floor. Now, the good news is we every single day add additional senators who are now in support of canceling the August recess. 5 vacations in 1 year is too much. Again, I don't even get 1 vacation a year, and these people get to go home and gallivant around the country for weeks on end doing whatever the hell they want 5, 6 times every. They'll go to vacation again come Christmas. Don't worry about it. Probably Thanksgiving as well. But we now have 11 GOP senators who have supported staying in D.C. to work on passing the Save America Act, rather than dismantling American security and the confidence of the people in elections. Rather than going on vacation and getting a tan in Sarasota, Tampa, Miami, wherever you're going to be going, these people are willing to stick around and use that time to get the Save America Act passed and have these provisions implemented for the midterms. We got based Mike Lee out of Utah, Senator Rick Scott out of Florida, Senator Ashley Moody out of Florida, Senator Jim Banks out of Indiana, Senator Tommy Tuberville out of Alabama, Senator Darlene Graham of South Carolina, Senator Bill Hagerty of Tennessee, Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, Senator Katie Britt of Alabama, Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, and Senator Todd Young of Indiana. That right there, 11 senators, is enough to force a roll call vote and make this real. We can actually cancel vacation and get it done. I would just suggest that if you do not hear your senators' names on this list, you call them. Call them and tell them that you want the Save America Act passed, that these people don't need to go on another vacation because they haven't done F all since the last vacation. Tell them to stay in D.C., tell them to get this done, and tell them to give America what it wants, which is a safe and secure election. You can also tell them to get rid of the bloody machines, because the machines are death. Thank you very much to Moon Baby, who says, hey there, family, I'm good to see you. Thank you to Filter Dog, who says Thune is anti-Trump. That is very, very true. Thank you to Trump One, who says, Zach, what is your prediction on the Save America Act? Does it happen? You know, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I think it's possible that it could happen. And I think that if what I continue to suggest, that J.D. Vance strips control from John Thune and basically takes over and forces the matter, then yes, I think it could happen. But under the current set of circumstances where we have a spineless, weak-kneed non-leader in John Thune, where we have essentially a group of elected officials who have abdicated control to a lawless majority, to a lawless minority. No, I don't think it's possible. I think that something else needs to happen. Now, this might tell you right here why it is that we have so many Republicans and obviously Democrats who don't want the Save America Act passed. It turns out that senators of 12 states have more registered voters than voting age citizens. We've actually spoken about this before. Back after the 2020 election, put a lot of focus on Michigan because that was my home state. We had more people registered to vote than we actually had voting age citizens. Now, 29% of these senators 7 seats. And okay, so you got 71% of these people that are opposing the Save America Act. 17 seats are Democrats, 29%, 7 seats are Republicans. But each and every one of these locations has more registered voters than people who should actually be able to cast a ballot. The numbers don't reconcile. But out of those Republicans, you've got Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, Dan Sullivan from Alaska, Mitch McConnell from Kentucky, Rand Paul from Kentucky, John Thune from South Dakota, and Mike Rounds from South Dakota. And you've also got Susan Collins from Maine. Each and every one of those Republicans comes from a place where there are more voters than citizens. So let's take a look. Shiloh Marks has actually broken it down for each and every one of those people. Oh, wow. Isn't it interesting? He's also going through and doing lists of how many voters were registered through the motor voter system that they have in South Dakota, where John Thune is the senator. They processed 147,980 voter registration applications where no proof of citizenship was required. John Thune won his last election by 151,309 votes. Isn't that special? You basically go anywhere and you can see the same thing. Katie Hobbs, governor of Arizona, remember when she stole that? She won by 17,117 votes. That feels just a little bit cheeky right there. If you know, you know. And Arizona processed 1.295 million voter registration applications through their DMV, none of which, of course, probably needed to show proof that they were citizens of the United States. All right. Now, let's take a look at some Joe Biden news. Now, this is actually Joe Biden adjacent, but I'm sure you will remember the arrest and indictment of Bill Stevenson. This was the man that Joe Biden stole Dr. Jill from. Now, he said one time, he has given a couple of interviews about this subject, and he was none too complimentary to Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden, one time on a hot mic in 2022, was caught saying, "No one F's with a Biden." Now, Bill Stevenson's wife was murdered, and Bill Stevenson was arrested for that murder. Now, during a recent phone call, one of Bill Stevenson's longtime friends told the author of this article that Delaware is not a state, it's a corporation. And that author is Joel Gilbert. Joel Gilbert, who has done the incredible work to show the crimes of people like Letitia Peekaboo James. So the point of saying Delaware is not a state, it's a corporation. First of all, Delaware was, very well known for their incorporation laws. But the point is that Delaware's political, legal, and law enforcement establishment is unusually close-knit. It's a very small state, and they have influential figures there often who know each other. They are friendly with each other. They will scratch their backs if need be. And that long-standing relationship between those entrenched political types, like a Joe Biden, can come in very handy at some point in the future. Now, Joe Biden spent more than 50 years basically at the center of that political establishment. Of course, he was a senator prior to being the vice president and then the resident of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So here, for June 1st of this year, a recent court appearance, State of Delaware versus William Stevenson, in the description of murder in the first. This alleged crime took place in the night of December 28th last year, where Newcastle County Police responded to this Wilmington, Delaware home of Bill and Linda Stevenson. They got a call from Bill Stevenson shortly after 11 p.m. Officers arrived and they found his wife, Linda Stevenson, 64, unresponsive on the living room floor. They attempted life-saving efforts, but the paramedics were unfortunately unable to revive her, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. Now, the initial autopsy showed that there was no evidence of foul play. And the funny thing is that they couldn't even tell exactly how it was that Linda Stevenson had died. So it was then that authorities declared a second autopsy must be performed. And it was only after that second autopsy and a Newcastle grand jury meeting to review the results of that autopsy that they indicted Bill Stevenson. Now, Bill is 77. That indictment came a couple of months later, February 2nd of this year. They charged him with first-degree murder. He was, of course, arrested without incident. He has pled not guilty. And initially, he was held on $500,000 bond. And then that was very quickly increased to a $2 million bond. Now, the prosecutors in this case have been remarkably tight-lipped, unusually tight-lipped. They have not publicly disclosed a motive. They have not publicly released reports from either the first or the second autopsy. There has been no underlying evidence that is being presented yet against Bill Stevenson. Now, some of you may be saying, well, of course, they're not going to say much because this is a murder case. They're going to try it. They're going to bring all that stuff forward. But think about how many murder cases you guys have seen over the course of your lifetime where prosecutors, when they announce an indictment, they will say, you know, this is how the person was murdered. This is why we believe the person is guilty of that. We will give all of the other evidence at trial. But Bill Stevenson lacked any financial resources to hire private counsel. He's essentially at the mercy of the Newcastle Public Defender's Office. And wouldn't you know it, the Newcastle Public Defender's Office gets up and goes to work every day with the Newcastle Prosecuting Attorney's Office. So Stevenson believes that the roots of his legal troubles are all because of that entrenched political establishment in Delaware and Joe and Jill Biden's relationship with it. Now, he made, as I said, a series of media appearances, and he spoke about the Bidens. And beginning in 2023, he actually went on Newsmax and spoke with Greg Kelly. And he challenged this long accepted public account of how it was that Joe and Jill met. The Bidens have always publicly said that they were introduced on a blind date in 1975. Stevenson says that that is not exactly what happened. He alleged that both he and Jill had known Joe Biden and his first wife, Nelia, since 1972. Now, this was early on in the career of Joe Biden there in Delaware. And I'm sure you know, Joe Biden's first wife was killed in a traffic accident. Of course, there was a daughter in the car. She also died. The sons, which would be Bo and Hunter, they were in the car. And of course, they saw their mother and sister die right in front of them. But the opinion of Bill Stevenson is that the affair between Jill and Joe happened before all of these things took place. So it wasn't a blind date. It was Joe Biden's first U.S. Senate campaign where Jill was somehow involved working on it. And Joe either seduced or just, began an adulterous relationship while Bill Stevenson and Jill Stevenson at the time were still married. Now, according to him, the oft-repeated blind date story was a total fabrication. It was created at some point in the future after they had met and decided that maybe we should not tell people exactly how it is that we came to know each other. Now, Jill Biden also wrote her own recent memoir. It was called View from the East Wing. And in that memoir, she reflects on her marriage to Bill and, of course, their divorce. And she recalls seeking an ownership interest in Bill Stevenson's successful nightclub called the Stone Balloon during the divorce, but she was unsuccessful, probably because she did F all to build it, and she also cheated on him, so the judge was likely to not just give her whatever she wanted. Now, Joel actually listened to the audiobook. I guess Dr. Jill narrated it herself, and as she's recounting the story, her voice becomes noticeably more emotional, even angry. She still seems to harbor some deep resentment towards Bill Stevenson. And Bill even told Greg Kelly that he believed the federal tax prosecution he was forced to undergo in the 1980s was also a result of that divorce dispute with Jill Biden. He was prosecuted for approximately $8,200 in payroll taxes that were only 1 week overdue. Does anybody here believe that the IRS just looked at Bill Stevenson apropos of nothing and decided that this 1 week delay was worth a prosecution over $8,200. No, that is 100% a favor that was called in by Joe and Jill Biden. They said, this asshole, my wife's ex-husband, you need to go after him and you need to crush him and you need to show him that nobody F's with a Biden because Jill is now a Biden. So, as Joel Gilbert began looking into this case, he wanted to verify the facts of Stevenson's indictment. He looked for access to the basic public records that are routinely available as a result of them being public records. Now, on June 1st of this year, he submitted 2 FOIA requests by email to the Newcastle County Police Department looking for all of the records related to this case. His requests included the 911 call, the body cam footage, which the police obviously would have had, investigative reports from the detectives investigating the death of Bill's wife, the crime scene records, autopsy reports, evidence logs, search warrants, official communications, and frankly, anything else that might be related to this investigation and Bill's indictment. Now, just 1 hour and 14 minutes after he submitted these 2 FOIA requests, 11:47 a.m. Eastern Time, both of the requests were denied. They both were denied because it was stated that Joel Gilbert was not a Delaware resident. Well, he's not going to let that slow him down, so he asked a friend who lived in Wilmington, Delaware, if he could submit an identical FOIA request. Guess what? 24 hours later, those requests were also denied on the grounds that this case involved an ongoing investigation. But the problem is Bill Stevenson had already been indicted, which means that they already came to their conclusions, which means the investigation was no longer ongoing. The court might have been ongoing, but Bill Stevenson has yet to be brought to trial. So the evidence that led to his indictment should be set in stone, and it should be available publicly. So Joel Gilbert called the Newcastle County Public Information Officer, a man by the name of Christopher Williams, and he asked why were there no records about the investigation? Why was it that nothing could be released, despite the fact that these formal charges have already been filed? Well, Mr. Williams replied, "That's what the district attorney's office told us to do. I'm just following orders, basically." So then he asked a contact at Judicial Watch if they could submit the same FOIA requests. Guess what? Those requests were also denied. Judicial Watch appealed the decision to the Delaware Attorney General's office, but that appeal was also denied as well. So in order to understand exactly what's going on here, taking a look at the prosecution's case, Joel attempted to repeatedly call Stevenson's court-appointed public defender, another man by the name of Ross Flockersy. So he hoped to ask him what evidence or court filings could be released to the public. However, perhaps unsurprisingly, despite multiple attempts, those calls were never returned and no response was ever given. So Bill Stevenson's cash bail, that's another tricky little question, because in Delaware, you've got 3 types of cash bail. Unsecured, you just sign your name, which is frankly probably what most people get. You've got secured bail, 10% non-refundable fee. Those are for the crimes that are going to be just a little bit more heavy. And then cash bail, which is 30% with a non-refundable fee. So a Delaware bail bondsman told me their courts typically assign him cash bail when they intend to ensure a defendant remains incarcerated pending trial. Stevenson is 78 years old now. He's got no financial resources. He does not present a flight risk. He doesn't have a bunch of money in the bank like the Bidens, and he doesn't have a private jet. He's not going to be able to just jaunt over to Israel or to some other nation that doesn't have extradition with the United States. But despite all of that, Stevenson's bail is a $2 million cash bail. In order to be released pending trial, Stevenson would either need to get a check for $2 million or secure a $2 million bond, which would require him paying a non-refundable fee of $600,000. That is totally unusual, especially in Delaware. Now, in a series of Substack articles that Greg Kelly wrote, he raised the alarm about the interconnected political relationships that exist there in Delaware. Garrett Ziegler, good friend of mine, who is responsible for the Hunter Biden laptop report, did this work with him. He's also the founder of Marco Polo. Anyways, Greg Kelly noted that Stevenson's initial court appearance was before the Delaware Superior Court Commissioner Lynn Parker. She's the one who set his cash bail. Parker is married to Charles Oberle III, who is a former Delaware Attorney General, former U.S. Attorney for Delaware, and a longtime political supporter, donor, and friend of Joseph Robinette Biden. Isn't that interesting? Kelly also pointed to Stevenson's court-appointed public offender, Ross Flockersy, the man who didn't bother to return this journalist's phone calls. Now, according to Kelly, Flockersy lives with or may be married to Misty Siemens. Misty Siemens is the chief of staff to the Delaware governor, Matt Meyer. Meyer has also publicly spoken about his close ties to Joe Biden. He actually worked on Biden's 1988 presidential campaign. He personally knew both Hunter and Beau, and later he actually hired Siemens after her work for longtime Biden advisor Ted Kaufman. Now, Stevenson, awaiting trial, he asked his lifelong friend Michael Calmer to serve as his power of attorney and oversee his personal affairs while he's incarcerated. And according to Calmer, he possesses no firsthand knowledge about the events surrounding Linda Stevenson's death. Nevertheless, he was recently subpoenaed to the prosecution as a witness. This has obviously raised concerns about possible intimidation tactics that the prosecution are attempting to use so that maybe Bill Stevenson won't have anybody out there to take care of his business. Right now, Bill Stevenson is held in a cell with 2 convicted criminals who are serving out their sentences. Unless something changes, he's going to be incarcerated through his trial in January 2027, even if he's completely innocent. And of course, like any other American, Bill Stevenson has the presumption of any innocence. He is innocent until proven guilty, but there is this extraordinary secrecy surrounding his case. The repeated denials of access to records that should be public, the unusually restrictive bail, all of them are legitimate reasons for greater transparency, not less. But of course, the political relationships that are connecting the Bidens to this court case and this proceeding, it make it seem even more important that these public records be released so the prosecution's evidence can be examined by the public. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen. Poor Bill Stevenson. I think he's probably going to remain in prison. And if I had to guess, I would imagine that the powers that be in Delaware are hoping that Bill Stevenson just dies before anything can be done to prove his innocence. Now, if the case that's supported by the state of Delaware has evidence that is that strong, this should be an easy go. They should very simply and easily be able to put this evidence out there. It would withstand public scrutiny before trial, and they would have no problem making their case. But until they release anything publicly, people looking at this case from the outside are going to say, hey, you know what? Something stinks in Denmark, or perhaps something stinks in Delaware. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think Bill Stevenson is being dealt a dirty hand, and I do not believe that he killed his wife. It is easy peasy 1, 2, 3 for people like the Bidens to have terrible things like this happen to good people. All right, let me say thank you very much to Filter Dog, who says, tubers are potatoes or yams. It's Tuberville. Didn't I say Tuberville? If I just said tuber, then obviously you know what I meant. Mighty Patriot, thank you for the phone. Appreciate it. All right, you guys. Another quick shout out to a sponsor of the program. Let me bring this up and let me say thank you very much to the Kids Guide. All right. Now, you guys know me. I am a dog lover. I'm an animal lover, okay? But dogs have a special place in my heart. If you're like me and you've got a dog at home, then you already know that they're not just pets. They are part of your family. They are your best friend. And when they go, my God, it is the most heart-wrenching thing in the world. And it turns out that America's founding fathers felt the exact same way. You can judge a man by the way he treats animals. And our founding fathers were the same. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, several of those men who helped build this country all had loyal dogs by their side. Some of them even traveled with them during the Revolutionary War, which means that those dogs were present for some of the most incredible moments in American history. when we found out about this, I thought that is a great way to get kids interested in history. And it turns out this company, the Kids Guide, is already doing that. They've got a guide called The Kids Guide to the Founders' Furry Friends, and it shares the true stories of the remarkable dogs that belong to America's founders. It is beautifully illustrated. It's easy for kids to enjoy. It's wholesome, and it teaches them about the people who shaped our country through the stories of the companions they love the most. Let's be honest, getting kids excited about history is not necessarily always going to be easy, but you tell them that you're going to teach them about George Washington's dog, and that's probably going to get their attention. So now, I thought this was a clever idea, and if you've got kids or grandkids who love dogs like I do, then they're going to have a lot of fun with this. These guys are running a special offer right now that includes the Kids Guide to the Founders' Furry Friends, along with some other freebies. It sounds like something that your family would enjoy, so I think that you should check it out. Just head on over to freeusadoggift.com. That is freeusadoggift.com, or you can use that QR code that you see on screen. Thank you very much to them. Also, thank you to Marcy for joining as a monthly supporter over on Rumble. Also, someone who had donated through my website filed a chargeback sometime in the last 24 hours. I haven't received an email from anyone, either at the dedicated web support line, which is listed in the email when you sign up to be a monthly supporter on my website. I haven't gotten anything in my Proton mail. And when somebody wants to cancel their membership, all they need to do is reach out to me personally. There's also a phone number, which is included in the initial email that you get when you sign up to donate through the website. So you can actually call that number and leave me a voicemail, and then I'll get back to you. However, when you don't do that and you file a chargeback, that counts against me, and they automatically take your $5 or your $10 or your $50, whatever it is, and then they charge me like a 50% fee on top of that. With the $5, they're probably just going to charge me $5, or maybe it's going to be more. I don't know. I haven't looked at it for today, but I have to file I have to dispute your chargeback. So I don't want to do that, and I'm happy to cancel your membership or help you get a different credit card on there if that's what you need to do. But please, please, please do not file chargebacks, because it creates a whole bunch of extra work, and there's always the chance that I may not be able to get the chargeback reversed, and then you basically get your money back, but then you also take a donation away from somebody else because I got to file a fee. But also the time and effort that goes into fixing this is quite confounding, to say the least. So if you are the person who did this, I'm not going to call you out here because I don't want to shame you. I just want to be able to reach out to you so that we can resolve this without having to go through the whole process. There have been a couple of people who have done this in the past, and generally speaking, we can get it taken care of and then, get the chargeback canceled. But then there are other people who apparently don't trust me enough to cancel the chargeback, and then, it's just not worth it. I can't spend hours and hours on this. But please, if this is you, or if you have a donation through my website, just reach out to me personally. We'll get everything taken care of. All right, you guys. Thank you very much, Marcy, for signing up over there on Rumble. I appreciate it. Mighty Patriot, thank you for the phone as well. That is awesome. Okay. My membership is down till August 1st. Broke till then. Otherwise, I'd have shade. No worries, man. No problem. The chargeback reason was they said that it was a fraudulent charge, even though they signed up on my website with a self-directed form. So, I'm going to dispute it, and they're going to cancel the chargeback. But it's a lot easier if the person who filed the chargeback can just cancel the chargeback, and then I can just, cancel their membership or do whatever it is that they need done. But yeah, that's the thing. When somebody files a chargeback, they essentially are saying that I have stolen their credit card information, which doesn't look good for me. I mean, ultimately, it's just, it's a hassle. It's a hassle. But I can get it fixed, but I would prefer to not have to go through it like that. All right, continuing on with the Biden clan. Let's see. The tapes have been released as a result of the oversight project. Now, as we've shown in the last week or so, Biden lost his bid to keep these tapes secret, and he declined to seek further review or remedy through an appeal. And so now the Oversight Project has released all of those recordings. There's over 70 hours of recording. So obviously I haven't had an opportunity to listen to all of them. But there is definitely some stuff that people have already found in there and that we're going to go ahead and talk about. Now, Jeff Clark, of course, former Assistant Attorney General for the Trump administration, responded to this news. He has a whole team of people, and they've been combing through the tapes and putting out relevant and interesting pieces. But he said ultimately the tapes make it clear that Biden disclosed massive amounts of classified information to his ghostwriter, Mark Zwanitsker. And Joe Biden even says in the tapes, I found all the classified stuff downstairs. Don't tell anybody. This is the stuff I'm not supposed to have. I mean, it's quite clear that he knew exactly what he was doing. It's also quite clear that Mark Zwanitsker, when he realized that there was going to be an investigation, he attempted to destroy and obfuscate evidence. He erased a whole bunch of stuff that he had on his computer. Robert Hur also considered charging Mark Zwanitsker and then ultimately decided not to because Zwanitsker fessed up once they actually confronted him with the fact that he had committed a federal crime. So Clark also quoted a law which would apply to Joe Biden. Oh, shoot. Where is that law? Hold on just a second. Maybe I have it open in another page. Okay. Yeah, here it is. Okay, he said, first of all, this is quite damning evidence of an attempt to flood the... No, shoot, that's the wrong one. Sorry, guys. Shoot. I have... Maybe it's not from Jeff Clark that I was referring to. I've got... Oh, man, I guess I don't know where it is. That's a real bummer. Okay, well, essentially, if you'll remember, for the book, Joe Biden received an $8 million book advance, okay? And he also ended up buying a house, and, he enriched himself through the process of breaking federal law, withholding this classified information when he didn't have the authority to do so, and especially taking it to an unsecure location. So Jeff Clark quoted this law because Joe Biden, under the law, should be forced to actually forfeit everything that he made as a result of breaking these laws. So he said, I want to make this point right now. The tapes make it clear that Biden disclosed massive amounts of classified information to his ghostwriter. Now take a look at 18 U.S.C. 798D. And last, ask yourself, why didn't special counsel Robert Hur seek a prosecution and then A, the forfeiture of the $8 million book advance that Joe Biden got for Promise Me, Dad, and B, his Delaware house and any other Biden property where he kept any of that classified information? Because that is what 18 U.S.C. says he should do. Right here, any person convicted of a violation of this section shall forfeit to the United States, irrespective of any provision of state law, A, any property constituting or derived from, any proceeds the person obtained directly or indirectly as the result of such violation. This is exactly what they did to the Walrus. John, former National Security Advisor John Bolton, and B, any of the person's property used or intended to be used in any manner or part to commit or to facilitate the commission of such violation. So through the plain reading of this law, Joe Biden is not, should not be continuing to hold on to that $8 million, and he also should give away the properties where he was holding this classified information. So this is likely the reason that Robert Hur gave Joe Biden this free pass. Now, let's take a look at the Oversight Project, because the Oversight Project right here has got a good number of clips. And let's begin right here.
Classified, so be careful with it. Okay.
This is the classified stuff, so be careful with it, he says.
Sure, it's not more classified, but
this must be redacted right here. Why is there no audio? Oh, there. Okay. Oh, so much is redacted.
And interesting, that date is 11/26/14.
Yeah.
And that's a day you were in Nantucket. So do you...
All right. So these recordings were made during 2016 and 2017. Again, there are 70 hours of recordings. So if you want to siphon through these and take a look, you can. But from the 345-page report by Robert Hurry, I mean, it basically goes through all of the relevant stuff. The long and the short of it is that Joe Biden should have been charged. Mark Zwanitzer should have been charged as well. He retained this classified information knowingly and willfully, even though he did not have the proper security clearance to do so. He kept this classified information in his home, in his garage, where anybody could have come in and gotten it. He also had it at his University of Pennsylvania office that he shared with the freaking Chinese. These were documents that were meant to be retained in a SCIF. He also shared them with his ghostwriter, who had no security clearance whatsoever. And again, his ghostwriter also deleted the information when confronted with the fact that there was a federal investigation that was going to be ongoing. But you know what? It's Joe Biden. He seems to be just as slippery as they claim Donald Trump to be. All right. Let's check in with Mitch McConnell. We got another proof of life this week, and a lot of people, actually, there was a really good one. Who was it? I meant to save this and I didn't. Okay. Here it is. It's from Politorican. This is so good. Okay, take a look at this, a video which seems to show Mitch McConnell and that's the wrong one. Mitch McConnell and his wife, Elaine Chao. Copy link. Okay, so this is the new image that was released by the McConnell team. That's so perfect. So perfect. Oh my God. Mitch McConnell, the cardboard cutout. That is essentially what he is. There was another one that I saw, which is Mitch McConnell basically being propped up. Oh yeah, here. Oh no, that's oh, where's the one of him being moved around like Weekend at Bernie's? Kept dying. I don't know. Maybe it's not on his page. All right. Anyways, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, who did an interview on a podcast a couple weeks ago and said that he was called by people in government who said Mitch McConnell was dead. That was the reason that he put that initial letter out. He is now sending another letter to the McConnell team and essentially telling him that if he doesn't step forward and give proof of life, then he should officially step down. So, dear Senator McConnell and Senate staff, I am addressing this letter to Senator McConnell under the assumption that he is capable of reading and responding verbally and not incapacitated by means of consciousness or cognition. If the senator is unable to respond for either of those or other conditions, consider this letter a demand for his Senate staff to be honest and transparent with the people of Kentucky. It has now been 43 days, and now it's 45 days, something like that, since his hospitalization. During that time, you have cast 0 votes, engaged in no official activities, and aside from 2 photos and corresponding statements, you've made no effort to communicate with your Kentucky constituents or the nation. Even the attending physician's written statement does not discuss your actual condition, including whether you can speak, reason, or carry out your duties as a senator. I understand anyone's desire for privacy, but when you run for office and serve as one of the state's 2 U.S. senators, you willingly abdicate much of your personal privacy. That's the deal, and we all know it when we run. Important events are happening in our country right now in your absence. President Trump is stuck in a war of his own making and has greatly strengthened the very country he claims is a threat. Prices continue to rise, crushing Americans who are working hard but not getting ahead. Americans' voting rights are being eliminated by the Supreme Court, gay, and threatened by congressional action, all while you are absent and refuse to communicate clearly and directly to the people you serve. As governor of the state you serve, I am calling on you to directly and verbally address the people of Kentucky and provide proof of your capacity to serve or resign. I am further sending this letter to Senate Majority Leader John Thune. John Thune's not going to do anything about it either. Per our research, a vacancy in the Senate occurs when a senator dies, resigns, or is expelled by a vote of the Senate itself. If you are unwilling or to voluntarily show that you still have the capacity to serve, I will insist Leader Thune fully investigate your condition, report to the American people, and begin the process if warranted. Now, everybody knows John Thune is going to continue to cover for Mitch McConnell. And also keep in mind that if Mitch McConnell does resign or is found to be incapacitated, there will need to be a special election. There will not be an appointment by the governor. I've seen people not understanding that process. It used to be that the governor of Kentucky would appoint a replacement, but just a couple of years ago, the Kentucky state legislature passed a bill changing that, so it has to be a special election. Now, again, on the subject, well, actually, first, let me say thank you to Sean Joe for 2 cans. Thank you to Sean Joe for a cookie. Thank you to Filter Dog, who says, Fauci asked China to engineer a new virus that just kills Rand Paul. We're going to talk about Fauci in a moment. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 cookies as well. Yes. Let's talk about Zohran Mamdani. My friend Marley Hornick of New York Citizens Audit and her new organization, realamerica.vote, have been looking into what are being billed as fraudulent votes that were cast in the New York City mayoral election that were larger than the margin of victory for Zohran Mamdani. Now, if you don't know who Marley is, I've done a couple of interviews with her in the past. She's a great one to have on. I'm going to see about having her stop in to discuss this particular report, most likely next week. But she has put together a 2025 election audit, which she says included large numbers of unqualified or non-existent voters. That is only part of the problem. Things are very messy in New York. She said, I actually don't know whether Mamdani won the mayoral race, and I'm not here to say that he didn't. She was speaking with WABC radio in New York. She said, the problem we uncovered is that the New York City and the New York State boards of election have no idea if Mamdani won the mayoral election either. And that's where the rubber meets the road. Because after examining 1 million of the total 2.2 million voters who allegedly participated in the election, her organization discovered that 7% were non-existent in the records. 6% had fake Social Security numbers, and 10% didn't even live in New York City. So in total, they identified 230,000 illegal votes. That is more than Mamdani's margin of victory of 207,000 votes, which is what he allegedly got over former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who is running as an independent. And this was despite Marley Hornick needing to still review the remaining 1.2 million voters. So Marley, again, out of 2.2 million voters, we studied about 1 million of them, and we found more votes that are apparently illegal than the margin of victory. Again, the issue is not whether or not Mamdani won. The issue is whether or not the boards of elections in New York are actually counting fair elections. And so that we are properly presented as we are constitutionally granted. Now, during the interview on July 19th, she suggested that the boards of election may be guilty of misconduct. These statistics that we discovered, they implicate both New York City and New York State boards of election in potentially very serious misconduct because we could not find 7% of the voters. They simply do not exist. We were unable to verify any of their critical information as provided by the boards of election, their name, their date of birth, their voting address. They don't exist. They're fake people. And asked what she intends to do with her findings, Hornick said she's already forwarded them to federal authorities. This is in the hands of federal investigators and prosecutors right now, because again, when our right to choose representatives is diluted or harmed, injured in any way, that is a serious crime in America. It's not a minor thing, especially when you're talking about 7% of the vote. Now, her findings have also piqued the interest of Naomi Wolf. You may have seen her. She's been recently speaking about this, both on X and with Steve Bannon on War Room. She was a political advisor to the campaigns of former President Bill Clinton and former Vice President Al Gore. Wolf used to be a liberal Trump hater until she woke up. She said, I've been trying to tell you this. Over 100,000 blank votes that should have been discarded were counted. When I showed this live on my podcast on the Board of Elections website, the site went down for 45 minutes. So much more fraud than this. So in the above post she published on X, she referred to an earlier allegation from June where she had purported to have identified over 100,000 blank ballots on the New York City Board of Elections website that were improperly counted and included in the election totals. But of course, once she identified it, everything disappeared. And then you couldn't see it anymore. I don't know if a clip of that exists or if it's within her larger podcast. But yes, here's a 2-minute clip. Let's take a look.
He won the mayoral race, and I'm not here to say that he didn't.
This is Marley on the ABC show.
The problem we uncovered is that the New York City and the New York State boards of elections have no idea if Mamdani won the mayoral election either. Let's look at their official records. Did they or did they not qualify the voters?
That's a fair question. So what did the data actually tell you?
Well, the shocking news said, and nobody better than you to break this story.
Okay.
7% of the voters in that election do not exist.
They don't exist.
They don't exist.
They could be dead.
No.
They're not even illegals. They just don't exist.
No, they don't exist. They never existed. They don't exist now. They won't exist in the future. They're not in utero.
So just fake people. How many of these types of votes do you guys think are on the voter rolls across the entirety of the United States? If it's 7% in New York City, isn't it reasonable to assume that perhaps we have at minimum a margin of 7% of all voters in the U.S. just don't really exist? I mean, certainly when you're looking at all of these blue states where they refuse to allow any review of the voter rolls or any cleaning of the voter rolls as they are mandated by the National Voter Registration Act or by the Help America Vote Act, it is reasonable to assume that we probably have a much, much bigger problem. Also, with a much, much bigger problem appears to be James Tallow, currently a candidate for senator in the state of Texas, running against current Attorney General Ken Paxton. Well, it looks like Ken Paxton is cluing in on a report that was just released by the Federalist. It appears that when James Tallow ran for the Texas District 50 State House back in 2022, he lied and claimed that he was living in he lied and claimed that his home address was his mother's address because he actually lived in District 52. So this means that he lied about his home address so that he could qualify for a seat that he believed he could win. So Ken Paxton says it is absolutely disgusting that James Tallow used his mother's address to not only commit voter fraud, but also to defraud his entire constituency. Also, he could run in a safe Democrat seat. He is a lying politician who has been deceiving voters throughout his time in office, so it should come as no shock that he continues his flip-flop tour across the state of Texas. Now, Ken Paxton is still the Attorney General of the state of Texas. His office should just file charges against Tallow for this. All right, now we're going to talk about Anthony Fauci and his diary. So yesterday, it was revealed by RFK Jr. that Anthony Fauci suffered a life-threatening condition as a result, most likely, of taking the COVID-19 clot shot, or it was one of the 8 clot shots that he took. I believe that he took 2 doses and then he took 6 boosters. So RFK Jr. dropped this bombshell yesterday as a result of the release of Dr. Anthony Fauci's diary. It appears that during the course of Anthony Fauci's time in public service, he hid this life-threatening complication after publicly taking the COVID-19 clot shot. Now, the diary that was released by Rand Paul includes so many nuggets, so many insights into Dr. Anthony Fauci's pathological narcissism. Now, in one entry, Fauci describes feeling pretty safe due to the public adulation while the cases of COVID-19 allegedly were surging. On March 10th of 2020, he wrote, "For better or worse, I am becoming an international celebrity. I'm getting calls from all over the world." But this newly released diary also includes many disturbing revelations. Fauci suffered a major vaccine injury a couple of months after taking the clot shot, right after it was first made available. And he never told anyone because, of course, you weren't even allowed to say that adverse effects or injuries from the vaccine were something that could happen. I can't tell you how many times when I was still on YouTube, I got videos shut down, banned, deleted because I would say something related to that. So RFK Jr. mentions that Anthony Fauci had a pulmonary infarction. This is a serious blood vessel disorder in your lungs. Let's go ahead and hear it from Anthony Fauci, or from RFK Jr.
Is this massive dichotomy between what he was saying privately and what he was simultaneously saying publicly. He says in his diaries on January 30th that the Wuhan lab could not possibly be the source of the virus.
Oh, we know that was all
and
false.
Then, well, we all know it, but now his diary, he says he knew that, and yet for 2 years he told us that
But he was given a pardon prospectively from the last administration. We don't know if it was an auto pen pardon. It doesn't really matter for legality purposes. But Americans want to know, a lot of them, is there going to be any accountability for trillions of dollars lost, children's education destroyed, and public health reputation, public health industry reputation shattered?
Yeah, and millions of people injured. You know, he lied about masks, he lied about social distancing, he lied about the transmission, he lied about natural immunity, he lied about...
Now, here's the thing. Somebody in the chat said it, and this has been a hot topic of debate since the beginning. People don't believe that Anthony Fauci took a real shot. What we know, and what I understand from my own tireless research about this since the beginning, is that there was not a uniformity of outcome from these shots. First of all, you had different shots from different manufacturers, and the effects of those shots, even within one brand, were not uniform amongst the population that took them, because you had different effects based upon different ingredients and locations of manufacture. So I think it's entirely possible that Anthony Fauci did take a real shot. Think about how many people took them and did not have an adverse reaction. It wasn't 100% across the board. I think that it is possible that Anthony Fauci might have been a total believer in vaccine science. And so based upon that belief, it is not outside the realm of possibility that he took a real dose. The alternative is that he took a fake dose and then he had a fake adverse reaction that he wrote about in his diary, something that he thought nobody was ever going to see. That seems implausible to me.
The capacity, as you just said, of the vaccine to prevent infection, he got vaccinated, a very, very public press conference in January of 2020. And then 5 months later, he had, and this is the first time that we knew this from the diary, he had a pulmonary infarction, which is one of the adverse events that NIH, CDC, and FDA said are expected from the vaccine. He never told anybody. He got treated for it privately by the best doctors in America. At the same time, he was telling everybody that that was not an adverse event.
Is there anything else we're missing from these diaries that has not been released that you can share with us tonight?
I don't think, I mean, I have to say a lot of this stuff is in my book, but based upon other documents. But there's something very dramatic, even for me, of seeing him write it in his own journal, confessing to being wrong, to lying about all
also
this
loving
stuff.
his own press. I mean, they're going on and on.
Now, you take a look back and you see all the people who did die, the people who had adverse reactions. I mean, there were plenty of famous people. There were plenty of powerful people who seemed to succumb as a result of taking these jabs. So, I think it's undeniable that people took what they thought was a real thing, only to find out later that maybe it was saline, maybe they got one of the hot shots. Now, what's also interesting about this is after this caught on, after RFK Jr. Had said this live last night, whoever is in charge of this diary, because it's all released online, somebody went in and actually redacted the section about Anthony Fauci talking about his pulmonary infarction. So right here in the original diary entry, June 19th of 2021, horrible roller coaster day due to some acute transient right posterior chest pain 2 days ago. Ted Lee ordered a CT scan. I got a call from the radiologist at Sibley Hospital where I had gotten a chest CT in the morning telling me I had a lesion in my right lower lobe where he felt was a cancer, non-small cell carcinoma. I felt like I got hit by a Mack truck. Dr. Lee quickly followed up on this and showed the film to Andrew Lerner at Sibley, who is a pulmonologist specializing in pulmonary nodules. Dr. Lerner felt that it was more likely an inflammatory lesion and that there were multiple other lesions that were very small throughout the right lower lobe. In addition, I had a pulmonary infarct in the right lowest segment that was definite. Again, Dr. Lee called David Hellman, who was with his son, who was an oncologist, who looked at it and said it looks more like benign than neoplastic and felt that it did not look like a non-small cell carcinoma. Finally, they showed the films via computer to Dr. Elliot Fishman, who is a top radiologist at Hopkins. He agreed that it was more likely inflammatory, and the only definite thing on the film was the pulmonary infarct. He recommended a follow-up CT in 3 months and began anticoagulation immediately with Eliquis. Now, Anthony Fauci, because of who he was, his minor celebrity status, he was able to call on all of these top medical professionals around the country, have people pulled away, likely from regular folks who had appointments and who were otherwise in need of help. But Dr. Anthony Fauci gets to go to the front of the line because he is, of course, the science. Now, here is the entry as it is right now. As soon as it was revealed, it was covered up. And that is a shame. But likely it's because it had something to do with medical information. Now, good news coming out of the Department of Navy. The changes instituted by the Navy in regards to vaccines signal a major shift towards an equitable treatment for religious accommodation requests, especially after we've seen the way people have been treated over the last several years. There was an article about Lieutenant Skylar Skipper. I believe we talked about it. Reportedly, he was forced out of the Marine Corps because of his religious objections to the vaccine. That report underscored the disparity in how the Navy and the Marine Corps handled these requests for religious accommodations, and it indicates that the Navy adhered to federal law, but the Marine Corps fell short. Well, a policy shift was made on June 30th by Acting Secretary of the Navy Hung Kao, formally enacted Sec Nevist 1730.13, which explicitly revoked the prior instruction that was referenced in the report. So an unnamed service member remarked that the article served as the direct catalyst for the sweeping changes that were made by Hung Kao. And this allowed people to essentially begin to receive their appropriate religious accommodations rather than having a disparity between the way that people are treated in different branches. So that is a major win for vaccine hesitant people, we'll say. Now, another thing that Anthony Fauci talked about in his diary was his behind-the-scenes efforts to shut down schools and essentially destroy the brains and the educations of children, millions of children all across America. Now, at the time that Dr. Anthony Fauci was behind the scenes working to close down schools publicly, he was saying something very, very different. He was deeply involved in decisions to have these schools shut down all across the country. And even though he said publicly it was not his decision, behind the scenes in his diary, he was very, very proud of his role, specifically in California and New York. Basically, these millions of children were sent home because he was the guy dictating the national response to the plandemic. It's a direct contradiction of Fauci's repeated claims publicly over and over again that he was not responsible for the school closures. He has peddled this lie for years, and kids who were affected have had catastrophic loss of learning, mental health crises. There has been a brain development issue when small children don't get to see the faces of the people that they are trying to emulate and learn from. I've talked about this before, but my nephew, he was born during all of this, and he did not see adults with masks off speaking for a long time, and that 100% had an effect on him. And I know that it had an effect on millions of other children around the country. But the social isolation, the depression, the lack of forward movement in terms of education, all of these things are 100% the fault of Dr. Anthony Fauci. So Fauci has repeatedly insisted that he didn't do this, but in his diary, it says something very, very different. Let's take a look. Right here. This is Fauci denying being responsible for school closures.
Was it a mistake in so many states and so many localities to see schools closed as long as they were?
I think in some case, I don't want to use the word mistake, John, because if I do, it gets taken out of the context that you're asking me the question on.
Well, did we pay too high a price?
Yeah, I would say that what we should realize and have realized that there will be deleterious collateral consequences when you do something like that.
Everybody knew that this was going to be the outcome. I mean, we said it at the time. It doesn't take an NIAID scientist to say this after the fact. We knew ahead of time, but this was what Dr. Saint Anthony Fauci, the patron saint of gain of function, wanted.
This idea that this virus doesn't afflict children is not so.
It actually mostly is so.
Does. We've lost close to 1,500 kids so far.
But much less than the older population, obviously.
Oh, of course. Yeah. But you shouldn't discount that it does afflict children. So it isn't without consequences. If you go back, and I ask anybody to go back over the number of times that I've said we've got to do everything we can to keep the schools open, no one plays that clip. They always come back and say Fauci was responsible for closing schools. I had nothing to do.
I mean,
let's get down to the facts.
Let's get down to the facts. I am the science. Dr. Anthony Fauci was not responsible for schools being closed. However, on March 9th, 2020, Dr. Anthony Fauci wrote that New York Governor Andrew Cuomo called him directly, seeking his advice on whether or not to close schools in the Orthodox Jewish section of Westchester County, where cases were higher than the rest of New York City. I tell him yes, Fauci wrote. 6 days later, March 15th, he documented another call with New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. I spoke with Bill de Blasio, Mayor NYC, and convinced him based on what I was saying publicly and my conversation saying to close NYC schools, he had already decided based on what I was saying on TV. I went on to tell him he should also close the bars and restaurants in NYC. He said that he would base this on my recommendation. So how many businesses is Dr. Anthony Fauci responsible for having destroyed? How many foreclosures is Dr. Anthony Fauci responsible for initiating? How many families is Anthony Fauci responsible for having ruined? It's no wonder they had to give him a 10-year pardon. That same day, Fauci noted a similar conversation with Ann O'Leary, the chief of staff for California Governor Gavin Newsom. Ann said that based on my TV appearances today and yesterday, the governor has decided to close the schools in California, as well as the bars and restaurants, except for the ones that Gavin Newsom was visiting privately that he didn't think he was going to be photographed at. That next day, New York City public schools shut down. Fauci then pushed for that aggressive 15-day mitigation guideline that explicitly called for closing schools where community spread existed. Far from distancing himself, the diary shows him later mocking President Donald Trump's efforts to reopen. He also blasted Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for moving forward and privately complaining that Trump does not care about the safety of the children, while Fauci worked to limit reopenings in areas with an uncontrolled spread. Only after months of damage did he begin to walk back that hard line, even as he continued urging delays in places like North Carolina. As has previously been reported on the diary entries, the same documents prove that former President Barack Obama coached Anthony Fauci through his Beaglegate firestorm. That's right. Obama was personally involved in Beaglegate. He actually deployed his own personal fixer and called in a favor at the Washington Post. If you guys don't know, Beaglegate was Dr. Anthony Fauci's experiments that he ran, which essentially tortured, mutilated, and maimed the sweetest dogs that you can ever possibly have. There's a reason that labs will use beagles as experimental animals, because they have such a kind temperament, because they are, unfortunately, because of that temperament, willing to undergo some really, really heinous things because they trust people. They trust people and they love people. It's terrible. Now, in August of 2021, you guys probably remember when the Gateway Pundit and White Coat Waste obtained by FOIA request documents showing that Fauci's NIAID had directed a portion of a $375,000 grant to a laboratory in Tunisia where beagles were being sedated, and then their heads would be locked into mesh cages that were filled with starving sandflies. Not only were those sandflies starving, so they would bite and suck the blood from the beagles, but they were also infected with Leishmania parasites. So the insects would then feed on the living dogs, and the animals were then isolated alone in desert cages for 9 consecutive nights to serve as bait for the wildflies. Additional records detailed another $424,000 University of Georgia study, also funded by Fauci's division, where they would also take healthy beagles, they would give them an experimental drug, and then they would intentionally infest them with parasite-carrying flies. This caused the beagles to vocalize in pain for months before they would eventually be killed. They also did domestic toxicity tests on dozens of beagle puppies that included the surgical removal of their vocal cords. So no matter how much pain they were in, no matter how much they tried to bark or yelp or howl, those dogs' throats had been cut open and their ability to speak was taken from them. In one of many other beagle labs that White Coat Waste exposed, where taxpayer-funded money was being put into them by Dr. Anthony Fauci, and these dozens of beagles had their vocal cords cut out, they continued to use them to have pharmaceuticals tested on them. This is disgusting and horrific stuff. This is like what you look for in end-stage civilizations. How do people treat animals? How do they treat children? Do they sell children for trafficking? Do they experiment on dogs and torture them? These are horrifying things. Now, thank God all of it has been exposed. The experiments were exposed, the funding was exposed, and people like us put pressure on Congress and forced changes to happen. Now, the only thing is that some of those experiments continued on even after Anthony Fauci left. I'm sure you'll remember it wasn't that long ago. Finally, the remaining beagles that had been bred in captivity to be used in these experiments were finally set free. But the Washington Post ran pieces that framed this public outrage as somehow driven by misinformation and that the images of these beagles being tortured were misleading. And the public campaign being led by White Coat Waste was somehow disinformation. And they downplayed the role of Anthony Fauci and the NIAID. There was a Washington Post cover story that referenced Fauci in his diary, and it had the title, "Fake Beagle Research Claim Deluges Fauci's Phone Line." But there was nothing fake about these stories. The funding in Tunisia and these experiments are documented through NIAID grants. And there were the studies that were documented as well. Now, once this was reported and it was sort of accepted as true, the Post itself finally acknowledged that the NIH had not been transparent during the massively viral public relations crisis, when they could have come forward and admitted what they were doing, or better yet, they could have stopped what they were doing. The push from the media was not for truth. It was not to get to the bottom of this. It was not to stop animals from being tortured in horribly, horribly constructed experiments. The thrust of the media was instead to protect Anthony Fauci and to go after those who were seeking truth, go after the people who were looking to protect these innocent animals. Now, Anthony Fauci actually wrote about Beaglegate in his memoir, and he described the backlash in this sort of self-pitying term. He mentioned actually the phone call that he got from Obama. He wrote, "But in the split-screen world in which I lived, the far right had found a new line of attack on me. An animal rights group released a report alleging that I had directed NIH funding to be used for cruel testing on beagle puppies. In the midst of this lunacy, my cell phone rang. It was a familiar and welcome voice on the line, Barack Obama. The former president asked me how I was holding up under this onslaught of lies. 'I'm concerned about you, Tony,' he said. 'You are a civilian, and you should not have to put up with this nonsense. As a politician, I'm used to this. But you have done nothing but serve the American public and the world for decades.' The conversation was just what I needed, and I hung up feeling much better." Fauci framed it as simply personal support. However, when we look at his diary, we find a different framing of the situation entirely. Barack Obama didn't simply call and offer his support for an innocent Anthony Fauci. No, he actually put his thumb on the scale. Rand Paul tells a different story, and we can find that right here. On October 25th, page 908, Fauci writes, "There seems to be no end to the nonsense. No doubt there was a concerted effort led by a group that I'm not sure what it is, but it is likely the Republican National Committee, which literally has squads of people looking out for anything and everything that I'm involved with and finding some way to attack me. The latest that came out last night and today is the fact that there is apparently an NIAID grant that is testing a vaccine for leishmaniasis in dogs. It vaccinates the dogs and allows sandflies infected with leishmania to bite the dogs. It is now being billed as horrific cruelty to animals directed personally at me. I have no idea what that grant is, nor what they are doing in the grants, and I'm asking the staff to investigate that now. But it has triggered a new hashtag called #ArrestFauci. We now know that apparently the grant was not an NIAID grant that supported the controversial research on the dogs. They listed us as the grantee when in fact that was a mistake. We are now trying to correct this with a statement to the press, and the crap goes on and on. Now they have begun a harassment campaign where I am getting dozens of calls on my cell phone using FaceTime from numbers that I don't recognize, which are clearly people who now have my cell phone number for harassing me about the Beagle study. Wonderful article by Dana Milbank in the Washington Post, blasting the right wing for harassing me. Now, the next day on page 909, he continues, "It is so very clear now that this is a concerted effort to discredit me and assassinate my character. We have countered the attacks regarding the Beagle dog experiments, but still the attacks continue falsely claiming that the NIAID funded the studies." And then on October 28th, pages 910 through 911, Fauci recorded a pivotal conversation with the reporter who would later deliver the media counter narrative. Remember, Dr. Anthony Fauci was directly in contact with many in the press because they fawned over him just as disgustingly as the left did in the general public. I had a conversation with Yasmin Abtaleb of the Washington Post yesterday. She's getting very worked up about the fact that she realizes now there is an organized effort to discredit me, and she wants to use the investigative reporter capabilities of the Washington Post to try and find out if they can track funding for this effort to the Republican Party or any other organization that is trying to discredit me. Let us see how this turns out. He added that PolitiFact was simultaneously trying to debunk the lies about me that are swirling around fast and furious about killing dogs, starting the AIDS epidemic, and killing orphan children. This is a massive campaign to attack me and discredit me. All of those things are true. FOIA records obtained by White Coat Waste separately showed that during this same period, Fauci told Abtaleb that he would contact her via his personal Gmail account, an arrangement that circumvented federal record-keeping requirements, and that he later denied under oath when questioned by Congress. Hopefully, Rand Paul will ask him the truth tomorrow. Abtaleb, then at the Post and later at Reuters, had expressed sympathy about the crazy articles. Here, Dr. Anthony Fauci lied about not using his personal email for NIH business.
Dr. Fauci, did you ever conduct official business via email?
To the best of my recollection and knowledge, I have never conducted official business via my private email.
That survey says that's a lie. We have this damning email from Fauci in October 2021 when he told the Washington Post reporter, "I will send you an email via my Gmail account." Now, the diary makes it very clear that this Washington Post reporter was being enlisted to turn the Post's investigative resources against White Coat Waste, a private nonprofit citizens organization seeking to do real journalism, exposing these disgusting and satanic experiments where animals were being tortured in the hopes of labeling their findings as merely a partisan attack. The escalation to the highest political levels is then documented on November 4th, page 914. Call from Barack Obama. Leslie Dock had contacted Barack Obama to ask him to give me a call. Barack Obama didn't just call him. Dr. Anthony Fauci sought him out to see what he could do to counter the slanderous lies that have been coming from the far-right press, extreme right elements in society, and even several members of the House and Senate. Obama called me tonight at 5 p.m. on my cell phone and offered to help in any way that he can. He started off the conversation by saying he was concerned about me and how was I holding up under this onslaught of slanderous lies. He said that I was a civilian and I should not have to put up with this nonsense. He, as a politician, is used to this, but I have done nothing but serve the American public and the world for decades. He expressed concern that this would interfere in my important work on behalf of the American people. I explained to him what was going on, and he was extremely sympathetic, and in fact said that he would call up Ron Klain or Jeff Zients to ask them to have the administration be proactive in countering these lies. I explained to him that President Biden, as well as Ron Klain and Jeff Zients, have been extremely helpful and supportive in making it very clear that they have complete confidence in me. In addition, I told him then Jen Psaki had continuously said at White House press conferences when asked whether the president would fire me, that indeed the president would never fire me, and this was a bunch of nonsense. President Obama felt that we should do more than just claiming that they have my support and actually go on the offensive and call out people who are allowing this to be said and are not stepping up. President Obama said he would call up Jeff Zients and tell him to mobilize some of the people in the administration to proactively go out and defend me. I told President Obama about the crazy things the far-right Republicans were doing, including the fact that Donald Trump Jr. had on his website the sale of sweatshirts and T-shirts to collect money for his campaign. And on the T-shirts and sweatshirts, it said, "Fauci kills puppies." Obama said that Donald Trump Jr. is an effing moron. He apologized for using crude language, but then he went on to say that Donald Trump was a hopeless idiot who was a pathological liar. He was very upset that none of the moderate Republicans were actually speaking out on my behalf and distancing themselves from all this terrible, slanderous behavior against me. It was a great conversation that lasted for 25 minutes, and he said that if he hears anything about movement in this direction, he'll get back to me. It was indeed an incredibly memorable call. 6 days later, on November 10th, on page 918, the operational pieces fall into place. Met by Zoom today with Eric Schultz at the request of Barack Obama. Eric was really very helpful. He has enormous experience at being a comms expert working with Obama. He was involved in deflecting a lot of the criticism against Obama during his presidency. Eric was very realistic about what can be done in my case, although he admitted that the level of attacks against me was clearly organized and unprecedented. He wanted to find out what was being negatively impacted by all of this. I explained to him that it was a very strong stain on me, but that I'm strong enough to withstand it, and he seemed to resonate with that. I told him that my scientific staff seems to be able to do their job even though the onslaught of this is so clear to them, and they feel badly about what I'm going through. I told him that the group that is getting most overwhelmed with this is my legislative and communication staff. Eric felt it would be very difficult to shame the right-wing media and even the right-wing members of Congress in the Senate, and so he's unsure whether going after them could make a difference. He wanted to know whether I needed more help at the staff level in communications and legislation. I don't think that we need to do that, but I'm referred him to Courtney Billett, with whom he already has a scheduled meeting. He did say that he was interested in the Washington Post piece that will be written by Yasmin Abtaleb. He feels that if we can galvanize other media people to call out those groups that are attacking me, then this could be very helpful. Once you expose the people who are instigating this, they are often reluctant to continue. And so I am waiting to see how this conversation with Courtney goes. I'm very grateful to Barack Obama for helping to set up this meeting with Eric. Now, who is Eric Schultz? He is the former Obama White House Principal Deputy Secretary and longtime Democrat fixer who is skilled in rapid response messaging. He advised the most effective path forward was to expose the instigating organizations. We're going to dox the researchers so they could become reluctant to continue. This is precisely the investigate the investigators approach that Abtaleb, the Washington Post investigative reporter, was already pursuing. The media was delivering for Anthony Fauci right on schedule. On November 19th, Fauci writes, "Press, fantastic article in the Washington Post today by Yasmin Abtaleb, the debunking in an incredibly efficient manner the false claims against me by the right-wing motivated white coat waste project regarding the Beagle experiments." He later notes the print version co-authored with Beth Reinhard, appeared to be on the Sunday front page, and he recorded a very gratifying public response. In a statement to the Gateway Pundit, the White Coat Waste Senior VP Justin Goodman wrote, "From the moment we exposed Beaglegate, the Washington establishment, bureaucrats, politicians, and the corporate media circled the wagons to defend Fauci over his funding of deadly dog labs. Now Fauci's own diary reveals that former President Barack Obama personally helped him coordinate a covert damage control campaign to discredit White Coat Waste after we ignited what the Washington Post called the biggest firestorm yet for Anthony Fauci. He deserved it." Thank you to Patrick D35. Zach, no more dog torture stories. Well, there are no more dog torture experiments, so we will never have to talk about it again, unless, of course, there is more information that is revealed from Dr. Anthony Fauci's diary. Thank you, Patrick. Also, Dirk McGurkin, Satan just gave a press conference. He said if Fauci is sent to hell, he will immediately be deported. Patrick D35 also says, Zach, please never tell that story again. And Dirk McGurkin says, proof of life image of Mitch McConnell. Yes. All right. Thank you to Filter Dog. Rand Paul's Fauci diary website has quietly redacted the story. Yep, we talked about that. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 cookies. Filter Dog says, don't forget party tits putting sick people in nursing homes. Oh, yes, of course. And Sean Joe, thank you for 2 more cookies. I do appreciate it. Okay. All right. So I'm done, Kat. So that was it. Anyways, very good news. The Pentagon has taken James Clapper's name off of an auditorium that was designed to honor him in perpetuity. The Department of War has just stripped the former Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper's name, from a military auditorium at the Defense Intelligence Agency headquarters in Joint Base Anacostia Balling. And the auditorium was previously called the Clapper Leadership Hall. It's now been renamed the Thomas Knowlton Leadership Hall. And it is now widely regarded, this location, as the father of military intelligence. The Thomas Knowlton was a Continental Army officer that deserves the accolades far more than former DNI James Clapper. The Thomas Knowlton Leadership Hall at Defense Intelligence Agency headquarters honors a true American warrior whose legacy is inseparable from the birth of our nation's intelligence profession. Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Knowlton was selected by General George Washington in 1776 to form Knowlton's Rangers. This was America's first organized military intelligence unit tasked with reconnaissance and gathering of critical intelligence behind enemy lines. We are excited to leave his name as a permanent fixture at the DIA. Now, Clapper, as you all know, has been accused of lying to Congress. He lawyered up long ago and stopped speaking publicly, but he testified during the Obama administration that the government does not collect telephone records of Americans. That, as you know, was a lie. Classified documents later leaked to the media showed that the National Security Agency had, in fact, asked U.S. phone providers for records of domestic calls and texts of Americans. Clapper disputes the retelling of that story. He says, I didn't lie. I made a big mistake. I just simply didn't understand what I was being asked about. Bullshit. There's absolutely no way James Clapper did not know. Now, according to a report from the House Intelligence Committee, Clapper was allegedly caught leaking the Steele dossier to CNN. That report stated that Clapper initially flatly denied discussing the dossier compiled by Steele or any other intelligence-related information to the Russia hacking of the 2016 election with journalists. But we now know that Clapper actually did discuss the the dossier with CNN journalist Jake Tapper. Tapper published the completely fake and debunked Steele dossier story on January 10th, 2017, and it earned him the Merriman Smith Award for Broadcast Journalism in 2018. Attorney General William Barr released Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report into the Russia investigation, which determined there was no collusion between Trump and Russia in the 2020 election. Now, Clapper disgraced himself in his career as an intelligence official. His name will no longer be honored by the Defense Intelligence Agency auditorium, a senior War Department official told the Daily Caller. As Director of National Intelligence, he oversaw the politicization of the intelligence community, turning what should have been an apolitical institution into a tool used against his political opponents. That record makes him unfit to be recognized in a building dedicated to the professionals who actually protect this country. Sick burn. All right. Now, we're going to finally round it out with a couple of stories related to immigration, because you may not know this, but ICE and Border Patrol are right now in the midst of running work site raids at farms around the United States. In New York in particular, dozens of migrant workers are right now being taken in with very little pushback. Residents in the area say it's the largest wave of immigration enforcement that they've ever seen. Also, Tom Homan sat down for an interview discussing the now refocused workplace raids that are taking place around the country. And this is something that it appears they sort of backed off on a little bit because of all the controversy, but now they're getting back to it.
I asked them about a month ago, put together a plan. It doesn't take an 1811 special agent to do a 99 inspection.
Right.
So create a warehouse. This is my idea. Create a warehouse, hire a bunch of smart contractors that can batch an I-9 inspection. Then once they see a lead, whether it's criminal or administrative, you push that lead to HSI.
I see. Okay.
And we'll get a lot more.
Oh, that's
done
interesting.
That way.
Yeah.
So I just think if it doesn't take a badge and gun to do the work, have a contractor. We got plenty of money. Have a contract do it, and that releases the badge and gun to do more badge and gun things. So that's something.
So what's the status of that?
They're working on the plan.
Okay.
Let's get some private contractors in there, guys. I would absolutely take a job with the federal government on a contract basis to go and tour a couple of farms and then call in those leads. I would be behind it. Also, down here in my neck of the woods in Palm Beach, ICE just went through a 4-day operation where they arrested approximately 310 people. U.S. Customs and Immigration Enforcement officers arrested actually 309 people during a 4-day operation. Now, we don't know the nationalities of these people, but we can bet that they were illegal aliens. Detained during the operation running from July 6th through July 10th was one man by the name of Jacob Zapata Castro. Agents took him into custody on July 9th at his Guatemalan bakery in Lake Worth Beach. The Florida State Board of Immigration Enforcement, which announced the arrests, said another person was identified on a suspected terror list as a possible member of Tren de Aragua. President Donald Trump has often referred to the Tren de Araguan Venezuelan gang in his push to enforce laws against U.S. illegal aliens, people without documentation. The 4-day operation did not result in the detention of a large number of people with violent criminal charges, but that's okay. If they're here illegally, they need to be arrested. 11 of those people detained did have legal violations over and above their status as an illegal alien, including driving without a license, DUIs, and drug charges. Beyond that, all of them were here without permanent status or legal status of any kind. The number of arrests is believed to be the most in an ICE action in Palm Beach since January of last year. Jacob Zapata Castro remains in custody as he faces a charge of re-entering the U.S. illegally. His arraignment is scheduled for July 29th in federal court. ICE agents took him into custody at his business, the El Quetzal Bakery on Lucerne Avenue in Lake Worth Beach, as his children watched. Agents pursued him there following an incident between his truck and an ICE vehicle a quarter mile away. Sounds like he ran and tried to get to his business to hide. He fled into that business, locked the door, and his workers said he did so to protect them from detention. Well, he was trying to stop himself from being detained as well. So I have absolutely zero sympathy for this man or anybody else. Continue to accelerate. On that note, 2 married pastors were arrested at a Texas airport by ICE agents. Why? because they overstayed their religious visas. They have now been released from custody following an intervention from Representative Henry Cuellar. I don't know why Henry Cuellar was able to get them released, but these guys are here illegally. These two assistant pastors from the Comunidad Cristiana Emmanuel Church in Edinburgh, Texas, were arrested at an airport at the border city of McAllen late last week. They had attempted to travel to North Carolina for a marriage conference that was put on by the late evangelist Billy Graham's nonprofit organization. The church leaders, 36-year-old Nepthali Zosiah Saucedo and 34-year-old Cynthia Sarai Cardona Otero, were supposed to have left the United States by July 7th of 2022, but they overstayed their religious visa by more than 4 years, which is, of course, an offense that makes them deportable by ICE. Get them out. All right. Now, we also have word on 2 employees at a Southern California surgery center. This was a big story back in 2025. You may remember this photograph right here, where an illegal alien ran into some type of a medical clinic, I believe in Los Angeles, and ICE pursued the illegal alien into the medical facility. But 2 of the employees working there obstructed the ICE agents and attempted to shield this illegal alien from being arrested. Those medical people were Jose de Jesus Ortega, 38, of Highland, California, and Danielle Nadine Davila, 33, of Corona, California. Both of them face felony charges for assaulting, resisting, and impeding a federal officer, as well as conspiracy. Now, the incident took place at the Ontario Advanced Surgical Center in Ontario, California. ICE agents were conducting enforcement when they followed a truck into the parking lot, and a Honduran national who was an illegal alien who was not a patient or an employee of the center fled on foot into the building to attempt to avoid arrest. According to court documents and DHS statements, Ortega and Davila, both wearing medical scrubs, intervened. They allegedly pulled the suspect away from an agent, grabbed an officer's arm and vest, positioned themselves between the agent and the suspect while yelling at the officers to leave. They locked their doors and they blocked law enforcement vehicles. Ortega was taken into custody. Davila was initially sought as a fugitive, and the Honduran national was ultimately arrested by ICE.
See, as you can see, the more you around, the more you're going to find out.
All right. And finally, this is peak retardation. The Democrats are most likely going to flip a solid Republican seat down here in Florida. Not because people are going to vote for the Democrat over the Republican, but because they have no choice. Because the Republican failed to file the necessary paperwork on time. This seat has been held by a GOP incumbent, Paula Stark, for quite a while, and she failed to qualify for the ballot, and she attempted to file a legal claim to reverse this disastrous mistake, but she failed in court. Leon County Circuit Judge Joshua Hawks dismissed Stark's lawsuit on July 23rd and ordered the clerk to close the case, which ends this Republican's lawmaker's last-ditch attempt to regain her place on the 2026 ballot. So now this will be a race where no Republican is on the ballot, and I don't even know if she can be a write-in. The only 2 qualified candidates remaining on the House District 47 are both Democrats, Jorge Figueroa and Anthony Neves. No Republicans. So because no candidate from another party qualified, the August 18th Democratic primary will be open to every registered voter in the district, regardless of political affiliation. The winner will face no opponent in November and will become the district's next state representative. Stark has been a 2-term Republican and was rejected from the ballot because the Florida Division of Elections determined that her campaign failed to submit Form 6. This is a required public financial disclosure. The qualifying deadline was June 12th at noon, and she blew the whole deal. Stark's campaign treasurer, Joel Davis, claimed he delivered the form to the Division of Elections before the deadline, but an employee mistakenly handed it back to him. 5 state election workers contradicted that account during a court hearing, and the employees testified that they never recalled receiving or returning Stark's form. The campaign was also unable to produce a time-stamped copy proving the document had been submitted. Judge Hawks then rejected the campaign's version of events. The court does not credit the story of DOE staff immediately returning the Form 6. The Form 6 was not turned in before the noon deadline, and Stark did not show that she qualified for this race. Stark maintained she had electronically filed the disclosure with the Florida Commission on Ethics the night before the deadline. However, state officials argued that her campaign was still required to submit the necessary documentation to the Division of Elections as part of the candidate qualifying process. And the judge initially gave Stark 7 days to explain why her lawsuit should not be dismissed, but now the case has been closed. So the loss is particularly painful because Stark previously won the competitive Central Florida district twice by razor-thin margins. She first captured the seat in 2022 by defeating Neves by only 878 votes out of more than 46,000 cast. And in 2024, she held the district by just 1,246 votes out of more than 77,000 cast. This House District 47 covers St. Cloud, Eastern Kissimmee, portions of Osceola County, and a smaller section of Orange City. It was expected to be one of Florida's most competitive legislative races in November. One missing financial disclosure has now erased the voices of Republican voters from the ballot and handed Democrats a legislative seat without so much as a fight. All right, you guys, that is all for today. Thank you to BrewBark for the 117 gold pills. Thank you for your tireless pursuit of the real news. I appreciate it. All right, you guys, thank you for being here. I'm going to go ahead and pass out these gold pills. Before we do, may I please remind you of the final sponsor of the show. That is going to be my friends over at onenessdrops.com/redpill78. When you use code RP78 or redpill78, you will get 15% off everything at onenessdrops.com, where they offer a number of very important products, including chlorine dioxide, which is necessary if you want to be able to produce your own clean, safe-to-drink drinking water if you have to get it from a dirty source. But I'm sure you're also aware, if you've watched my show for any length of time, that chlorine dioxide is an amazing substance that can be used for so much more than just making clean water. You can get it in multiple different types of formulations. Doesn't matter. When you combine them, it's the miracle of God's chemistry that creates chlorine dioxide. They also offer mullein extract, which is great for lung health, soursop extract, which is great for cellular regeneration, and one of my favorites, DMSO, which is a solvent that you can use on injuries. It will bring blood up to the injured areas and help them heal. It will immediately relieve pain. I have had so much wonderful results using DMSO on a number of different areas, and it also is a carrier. So if you put it on your skin and then you have another medicine or topical that you put on it, it will help bring that medicine directly where it's needed. The other thing about this is you can also get bundles where they put multiple things together. You get a discount because it's a bundle. And then you also will get my discount on top of that, the 15% off when you use code REDPILL78. So check them out, onenessdrops.com. And they have so many different products on there, all things that you're going to love. They're great for you. All right, so passing out these gold pills, and then I will see you guys tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Until that time, good luck, God bless. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys on a raid. Peace. Oh, no. Oh, hold on. I have to figure out how to get the outro vid working. So that's OBS Elements, stream ending. Where is it? It's missing. Stream ending. There we go. And it just doesn't work. Okay. Well, that's it. I'll try to get all this stuff working tonight. All right, you guys, please support the sponsors. Look in the description below the show. Whole bunch of different things. Every time you purchase from them, it helps out a little bit, and it helps me continue to do this work. So, all right, you guys, peace.